5.
Send everything you have.
Surely this is it, right?
I don't know. Just hit pause.
Hit the fucking boss.
Tree.
Give me my fucking chair! Give me my chair! Give me my fucking chair! Yeah!
Let's go!
Welcome everybody to MogTalk. If you guys are unfamiliar with MogTalk, it's a show based around the Final Fantasy XIV community discussing everything from Savage Raiding to Chocobo Racing. Today is February 4th, 2023. This is episode 270. And today we are definitely going to be talking about the World Race. Bringing on board, of course, the team that won the MogTalk event for the World Race. The Corsair worked with us on the prize pack. We're bringing on Kindred. And we brought on 10 members from Kindred. I see all the wonderful fish in chat, so we know we got the right people here. But before we get too much into it, actually, you know what? I lied to you guys. I told you we're going to start with one thing, we're going to start with another thing. I'd like you all to kind of say who you are and what your role is in your group. And I'm just going to let you guys kind of go one by one, alphabetically, starting with Bagel.
Bagel, one of the tanks for Kindred, usually main tank. Yeah.
that works. Okay. Yeah, main tank. Okay.
I'm Calypso. I'm one of the melee DPS. I usually preference the maiming roles, so it's Dragoon and Reaper for me.
Cool.
I'm Darth, ninth man, spreadsheet man, professional stream watcher.
I appreciate the stream watchers. We got a lot of them in chat too.
I'm Mo. I'm also a ninth man. I do a lot of callouts and I do a lot of strat stealing.
Perfect. Yeah. Do you want to do a quick shout out before we keep going on who you stole strats from?
Shout out Otternuts. They're the best.
Perfect. All right, Izu.
Hello, I'm Izu. I'm the other melee from Kindred. I usually play Ninja, unless I'm like pushed on Samurai.
Okay.
I'm Kareth. I'm one of the healers for Kindred. Been playing shield healer mostly. This is prog I played Sage.
I might be asking you some questions soon.
Oh no.
Kabachi.
Machi, I usually play region healer.
All right, Nari.
I'm Nari. I am the other tank, and yeah, I'll play whatever we need. So I did a bit of flexing this race already, so I assume we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Perry.
Hello, I am Perry. I am the caster for Kindred. I play whatever caster the group needs, but I usually find a way to chad my static into making me play Black Mage.
Good job, by the way.
Thank you.
And then Shura.
Mm-hmm. Hi, I'm Serana Crescents. I usually just go by Sura. I play all the physical ranged. I'm usually shoved on a dancer, but that's okay. And I'm sure a lot of chat knows that sometimes I do callouts too.
Okay. All
Quick
right.
shout out to our member who's not here as well. We had another ninth man, Kumi, who is unfortunately not able to make it, but they were helping out behind the scenes as well.
Okay. And was that the only other one?
Directly,
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's all right. We got all the people who were, that care enough about the Final Fantasy XIV community to be here. So, no, I'm just kidding. I understand what it's like to have a real job. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. That's not what I meant. That's going to start up a whole other thing. So, a job outside of this that forces you away from your passions and duties. All right, guys. Welcome to the show. I do want to go ahead and ask you all how you're feeling after a couple of days, not having the Prague Omega.
Chair.
Honestly, kind of empty inside. Been a little bit bored since Prague ended.
Yeah,
I kind of missed doing the fight already.
I somehow got bored enough to join Ultima PFs this morning. That's how I'm doing mentally.
Oh wow.
I was just exhausted. I slept like 24 hours total in the last 2 days.
I've been hanging out with a bunch of friends, and I told them that I realized I forgot what I used to talk about before Omega Prague. It's been too long.
I've been filling the void by ninth manning for one of my friends' groups. I'm going to try to teach them our strats for P5.
Wow.
Yeah, I have my own speed skill static, and we're starting top Prague. We started yesterday, so I'm doing Prague again.
I was happy to start getting into cleaning my apartment since I hadn't been able to do that for a couple weeks, and it has been grating on me.
No, I understand that feeling completely. I still haven't been able to get back to, well, I mean, it's hard to keep my house clean. Unfortunately, a child runs around, crawls around at the moment. So, you know, one of the things, like, it definitely sounds like Omega seriously captured you guys and put you in Stockholm Syndrome. Like, I feel so bad about that. But at the same time, I mean, it does feel kind of weird for me. Like when we were doing the event, we did the event for like a whole week, and then right afterwards we just, you know, hard cut stop. And you're just like, well, back to normal life, right? After spending all this time with a whole bunch of people closely, all doing the exact same thing day after day, and working together, you just stop doing it. And you go back away from that group of people. It feels kind of weird. I'm guessing you guys were kind of feeling somewhat the same feeling.
Yeah, it definitely feels weird.
That first day we ran out of PTO induced a lot of that feeling in a really bad way, because we all wanted to be raiding, but we couldn't, and people had things to do. So I remember sitting there for like 90 minutes before our start time, just thinking, I want to pull the boss. I want to pull the boss.
Yeah.
I spent all of stand-up with streams open. I didn't do a single thing at work that day.
That's fair. Yeah, dude, like, I don't know. Like, I get pretty attached. You guys probably know I get pretty attached to the World Race and everything going on, and I put myself in there. And so, like, and it always feels good, especially now doing these events and doing the charity stuff, and it just always feels great in the end. You're like, man, this feels like something that is, you know, a whole bunch of people around, everyone's being real nice to each other, kind of lifting each other up, and then you go back to your job and your boss is like, all right, you know, I'm kind of disappointed you didn't do this, this, and this, but, and you're like, man, I don't give a fuck. I know. It seems so meaningless in comparison. So I don't know. I understand how you guys feel. Yeah, the TPS reports, basically, all the wonderful things that go in line with that.
Actually called GMT reports now.
GMT reports? Do they? Oh, man. Yeah, if my boss ever figured out what my life, by the way, with work and this is completely separate. I'm sure it'd be, if my boss found this stuff, he'd be like, what the fuck? Video games? But I don't know.
I had to actually do research for the fake vacation I went on to my boss about before I went back to work.
Do you guys? So you guys kind of don't tell your work crew anything about your streaming or raiding or prog or anything like that?
Never. No. Ever.
I do, but I'm the odd one out, apparently.
Yeah, I do, but that's because I work in the video game industry, so they understand.
It's fair.
I work with a bunch of people who kind of have a lot of similar interests, so I was like, yeah, this is what I do. And they're it's still a little offset from what they generally like to play, but like it's all video games at one point or another, so there's a lot of commonality between it, and so I can kind of bridge the gap a little bit on it.
That must feel good, man. Because I am completely two separate worlds. They're all like, yeah, did you enjoy your vacation? I'm like, was it a vacation? That's all I said. I had some stuff I had to do, and that's it. that's what I put it to that, and I don't go into it. They probably feel kind of awkward and weird about it, but I'm like, I'm not gonna go into it, man. I don't want to get caught as like some horrible lie or anything, but at the same time, I don't want to have those awkward conversations at work.
It was a personal project.
Yeah, personal project. Yeah. All right. Well, the other thing that you guys told me that I felt was kind of interesting the other day when you guys cleared was that you guys are actually kind of a newer group, right? Like, that doesn't seem right. You're all like newer overall.
Relatively speaking.
Okay. Like, when did you guys get together?
Well, so the actual group was made near the start of Eden's Promise. I had found the group with someone I did speeds back in Eden's Verse, and our intention was to create a group that was going to do Eden's Promise speeds and then do the ultimate that was supposed to come out, if you remember, that was supposed to come out during Promise, and then unfortunately got delayed. So we spent that whole tier just doing speeds, and then from there we wanted to move on into bigger, better things, so we started getting into the world prog scene. So our first world race that we took part in was in Asphodello, so that was the start of Endwalker. So yeah, the group was made at the end of Eden's Promise, or I should say middle of Eden's Promise, but we only started getting into the world race scene at the start of Endwalker, so pretty new in that regard.
So for people who don't like have a good, I guess, mental mapping of like when the patch dates are in their head, that would be, I think, early February 2021 was just after the release of Eden's Promise.
2021? Yeah, no, that adds up. Eden's Promise was like the first, not the first like streaming event that we did, but it was the first one that we did like just the Final Fantasy 14 community without like any help, because we worked with Method on the one before, and then we started our own thing and did that for Eden's Promise, and that was our first one. And then we started really getting into it at the start of Endwalker, I guess, to be honest with you. What's funny is right after Eden's Promise, the kind of event that we had for this one, we were lining up to do it with Ultimate, with DSR. But unfortunately, they delayed it, and so that put a huge gap in all the content that we were doing. And when DSR finally came out, my daughter was just born, so it was just like, all right, well, fuck, man. But no, it was awesome to see. You know what? One of the big things I remember your group from recently, of course, was the Savage Dungeon. Right? You guys had a couple of people doing Savage. Not Savage Dungeon, I guess Criterion. Right? If I remember right, or am I wrong on that?
No, yeah, I think the majority of the group did the Savage Dungeon. I didn't take part of it because I had work, but I think we had just two, like, I got essentially a light party split between the roster, and then I think Darth filled in for my spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was anything we really heavily planned. We were just like, yeah, this exists. Who's going to be up for it? And a bunch of us said, yeah.
Almost all of us. Of course.
All of us were
We also
yeah.
didn't end up doing the Savage part of it. We just did the Criterion.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of people
everyone
fell
else
off.
had work.
Yeah.
We weren't really planning for it, so we kind of ran out of time, and people had to go back to work.
Yeah,
You guys had
And
also
after
been doing
that, I never
speeds
stepped
all night.
foot back in there again.
Yes.
You guys have been doing speeds all night because of the upcoming partition, so you were still tired.
Yeah. I think, in the future, Criterion, you take a day off of work and that's it, right, if you wanted to actually race for it. But I wonder how that's going to, like, pan out going forward. Was it the Criterion guy involved with this Ultimate? Do I remember that right?
Yeah,
so,
he
yes.
was.
Yeah. And so I guess the interesting thing about that is this would turn out to be the hard. All right, I want your opinion on this. Do you feel like this was the hardest Ultimate?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, by far.
I think so. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. That is absolutely insane. I think we 100% we're at the peak now. They're not going to make harder fights than this. There's no way.
Well,
I mean, there's theoretically a way, but I think we've definitely reached what I would consider currently reasonable for them to make.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody.
The problem with top, not problem, but the difficulty with top is that there's no patterns to everything. You have to know every way to do every single thing, and you need to be able to identify which one you are in a very short amount of time every time.
I think the other part of it too, that's a very large factor, and the other large factor, at least in my eyes, is that this fight has no real downtime. Like there's no mechanic that you can autopilot. Like once you know it, you can just do it for free. Every mechanic in this whole fight is like brain on active. You have to think about what you're doing next, and it's different every time, every single time you do it. And it's just you can't rest. You get like a couple seconds of rest in between phases and the cutscene, and that's it.
How do you guys?
I think in addition
Go ahead.
to that, sorry, I want to add an additional point. I think in addition to that, there's a lot of sort of open-endedness, especially towards sort of the latter stages of the fight, with how you decide to distribute quickening Dynamis stacks, and how those, like coming into Omega especially, how those are distributed is going to affect how you end up giving out the rest of them. And given certain patterns, you can end up in situations where multiple people would be able to do a particular thing. So there's not a lot of like hard and fast set in stone. If I have this, I go to this, because there can be multiple people who fill that criteria.
Yeah, I mean, and that is that. I don't know. So people have asked for that in the past, I believe, that they want like content to be a little bit less 50-50. But now we're seeing what like that really looks like. Do we still want that?
Yeah, I think the biggest example of this was the third Hello World in P5 in the start of the Omega Trio, where when they were doing like the really tight predation dodges, I was spending like a full 10 seconds deciding who should be going where. Like I don't really know how. I'm sure it's possible, but I don't really know how we would have come up with a strat that didn't require 9th man callouts there.
I think with a lot of this stuff, ultimately what you're seeing with regards to mechanics that are completely role agnostic and mechanics that are a bit more open-ended about who does what role is it's simply Square adapting to the talent and the skill of the player base. They've realized that there's no need to make mechanics target certain roles because those mechanics are solvable if they're role agnostic. So let's just make them role agnostic. So as the player base demonstrates their ability to do things like this, the encounter designers are saying, screw it, let's make it hard. They'll figure it out. They'll figure out a way to do this.
The program loop, the first mechanic of the fight, is probably the best example of this. Like before now, and even maybe in previous ultimates, if program loop showed up, it might have locked onto like supports and DPS or a light party and another one, rather than what we have, which is full complete randomness on it.
So I guess a good question for you guys is how much of this. Well, let's start this. What did you guys do the prep for this Omega? Did you just go do anything?
UCOB.
We've done a lot of things.
Okay.
The thing is that like at this point, so we've done a lot of prep for all the ever since we started getting into the world race. We've been doing a lot of old content to prep for these encounters. So we've basically gone through everything that the game has to offer within reason at this point. So there wasn't a whole lot to really choose from, but we obviously did pick all of the Omega fights. Like that was the given, right? Just go through every Omega fight, just see what mechanics they're giving us that we might see in the new Ultimate, because it was the Omega Ultimate. And then besides that, we were initially thinking T speeds, but we ended up settling on UCOP speeds, just because that wasn't something we had done before. And then after we were done with UCOP and Omega, we also did a little bit of old Eden fights. We did Voidwalker, we did Leviathan, we did Idol of Darkness, and then was it after? It was probably either after that or shortly before that. We were like, it would be fun to do no jobs on UCOP. So we did some of that. Because at that point we were just looking for content to do. And I mean,
is the best.
Yes. So yeah, that's what we did for prep this time.
You left something out, Perry.
The sand room.
The sand room.
Oh, the sand room. Yes, there's a room in Halicarnassus that does not show up in the Savage. It shows up in normal. It's the little sand maze, and Kareth was dying for us to do it for prep. And I was like, okay, I mean, you asked for it.
It's very unfortunate that it didn't show up. We were all hoping, we were hoping for a lot of things. Like there's a lot of hopes for like Kefka and some of those mechanics from maybe bringing in new visualizations of what the top warriors were or whatever else. What was your group like hoping for, expecting out of this fight before going into it?
Train.
Honestly, at least for me personally, exactly what we got. When that live letter first came out, and Yoshi P said something to the effect of, I believe his words were, anything that Omega has seen or experienced is fair game to show up in this ultimate. And a lot of people did take that to mean like, okay, all of Deltascape and Sigmascape. But I'm sitting here thinking, we've got 3 distinct Omega encounters. We've got O11 with the Beetle, we've got MNF, we've got Final Omega. Like, that's enough to just make an ultimate out of if they, work a few creativity muscles and make a, special phase or whatever. So I'm
like
kind of
making
glad
the
they
models
just,
gold.
yeah, and then creating the final Alpha Omega as well. But I'm kind of glad they just stuck to that. I don't feel like there's any need to introduce like Kefka or X-Death or anything.
I think the one thing that I was expecting was, I for clarity, like what we got, what this fight is awesome. I love this fight. It's probably my favorite ultimate right now. But going into it, I was expecting similar to what we got, except in P5, where how the fight works right now is Omega summons like all of its previous forms, right? You're fighting the Beetle and Final and MNF all at the same time. But I was expecting that to be Omega calling in the simulations of like Deltascape and Sigmascape. So a trio with a bunch of the bosses from Deltascape. You get X-Death and Catastrophe showing up at the same time, instead of what we got, which is Omega using all of its own attacks in different combinations. But so that's what I was expecting, but I'm not like sad with what we got. This fight's awesome.
I mean, technically, when you get Dragoon LB'd, it's like Midgar's there.
That's
right?
I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I think my only concern about the way that they decided to design top with it just being exclusively Omega is that the one thing I'm looking most forward to in the future for this game is the Eden Ultimate. That is going to be super pog. And I really, really, really want there to be Shiva in that fight. If it's just like Gaia and stuff or Eden, I'm gonna be a little disappointed.
Nah.
So,
it's definitely, so I can go ahead and tell you how that fight's gonna work out. You're gonna have Eden, the big spaceship thing, right? And it's gonna do all of its stuff. And then you're gonna have Gaia in there for sure. And then you're gonna have 100%. I don't know if it'll be the Shiva form or what kind of form, but you'll have both oracles. So it's basically 2 oracles in Eden. So there's no way they can get around that, because I'm trying to think of how else they would really design that fight.
Well, there's only one thing that matters. That's, did they include Lights Rampant?
That's true.
I need Ultimate Light Rampant.
I would like to
rampant
temper
relativity.
your expectations. Okay, as an FF14 boomer who had his soul crushed by T, I need you to understand that they will leave out something you loved and you will never get it back.
Yeah.
Where were the pinballs in T?
Where was the gorilla? Where was the gorilla, man?
So I'll let you know. I don't know if you know this, Kareth, but I had a casual static, and we had some issues with people leaving and coming back, and I had to play Scholar for Alexander for the Midas tier, and those balls, They could be gone forever, and I don't give a fuck.
They're the best mechanic in the game. They are the best mechanic in the game. I will not be silenced.
It's just like you think you're not gonna get hit by it, but you're just a little slow, and you get hit by it, and it's just like
You just Fantasia to Lalafell, and you can duck under them all.
That's true. That's true. That's true. But yeah, no, it was a rough time. It was the first time I was actually doing healer and savage raids too. I'm scarred by that fight. But yeah, no. It's gonna be fun to see what they come up with next. They have a lot of room to work with ultimates. It's sad that we're not going to see another ultimate. I think for probably 2-ish years, maybe a little bit under, but it's going to be a while.
It is sad, but it's also fun in my eyes. Like, this Ultimate Prog is so much fun, but it is also exhausting. And having one every other patch cycle would just be, I think it would be too much for development and for the raiders.
2 is a good number per expansion, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
If they feel to maintain this difficulty, then yeah, I guess that's fine.
They need to give us something in 0.5 though. Is what I'm hoping
Criterions.
Yeah.
Mile.
Or I mean, I'd love
Dungeon.
I want
Mic
DRS
off.
2.0, man. I had the time of my life doing that. That was so much fun.
Mic
Oh,
on.
DRS is so
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
that would be good, but I don't know where they would pull that from, right?
Yeah.
So
The end of the deep dungeon is DRS.
maybe Island Sanctuary. Maybe at the very end of all their Island
Sanctuary Savage.
Yeah. They have some dungeon like in your island that you can get, and then you could get 8 people together and go raid in it, and that'll just be part of your Island Sanctuary going forward. So every once in a while they'll throw in a new kind of DRS or something in there. We'll see. We'll see.
DRS was fairly successful, right? Like,
It was
I don't
good.
think they got negative feedback about it, so I'd expect something like it to happen again eventually.
Yeah, I hope so. Because the extra content like that isn't. I mean, Criterion Dungeons kind of fill in that void a little bit, but we always had some kind of like sort of bigger dungeon or fighting type of content. That's not like super difficult, but had something to it. Right? We had Baja last expansion. Before that, we had. Was it Eureka? Was that the name of it?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Eureka. So it worked out pretty good. I think before that, that's when we had the wonderful dinosaurs on islands, right?
Diadem.
Yeah, Diadem. Yeah. That didn't really work out too well, but they definitely fixed it going forward with those other 2 implementations. But what we have instead of that is Island Sanctuary right now, I think, because that's where all the mapping resources are going to. So I don't know.
I need to do that now that I have time and I'm actually playing the game.
I forgot that existed.
Yeah.
I brought it up.
Yeah, it's there. There's a lot of stuff that kind of faded out into. I mean, it's there, but it's hard to remember it's there. You bring up stuff 100% like Chocobo Racing. Most people don't even think about it anymore. It's just there.
Shout out to the Mahjong gang.
Yeah, Mahjong's there.
My
Lords of Vermilion.
Lords of Vermilion's there. And they keep
Mahjong.
every time they add a minion, they have to make some sort of ability for it.
They still maintain
Cracks
that?
me up.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
they
they
do.
do. It's
Every new
insane.
minion has a new ability for Lords of Vermilion.
But I mean, I'm
There's
pretty
like
sure
a-
they just copy
There's like
and paste.
one guy. There's like one guy who's just sitting there maintaining Lords of Vermilion every time they
Wait.
add a new minion.
Yeah.
Wait, that's kind of awesome because he could do anything he wants and no one will know.
This is probably
I
true.
have-
Anything.
I've heard that there is a bit of power creep going on, so that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there are a handful of people out there, like a couple, 2 or 3 on every data center that actually go kind of hardcore with it. And I would love to force that out and like get competitions for it. I mean, we can get.
That would require it to be a good game.
No, it doesn't. You just need money.
Fair enough.
Yeah. You just throw money at it and like, all right, I'll get good at Lords of Vermilion for a couple $1,000. But yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see something like that happen. All right, well, for Omega, there's so much to talk about with it. I guess I want to ask you guys too about there's the first 3 phases, first 4, I guess, that were like, okay, this is Omega. Then they gave us kind of the reveal going forward with Phase 5 and Phase 6 of what the ultimate portion of it was, which is this Dynamis thing. Did you guys have any kind of like lore people in there, like trying to put together pieces or anything, trying to make sense out of the wordplay, anything like that, or were you just going and hoping it'd work out?
I mean, I can speak for myself in that I went and replayed the whole Omega story on my own before we did this one.
Mm-hmm.
Just so, like, because it was partially because both DSR and This Last Savage had lore implications that were like active clues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to make sure that I was refreshing everything. And yeah, there were hints. Yeah, like but it's like it's just extremely obvious. Like if you paid attention to the story at all,
mm-hmm.
and like you know what Endwalker is about, that's kind of all. Like there wasn't. You knew the Dynamis was going to show up. That's kind of all you needed and what you got. And
Mm-hmm.
that's. I don't know. It wasn't. You didn't gain too much from knowing the lore this particular time around,
Right.
but it definitely augmented the experience.
Yeah, the Dynamis thing's interesting because it really played a big part in Endwalker, right? And
Yep.
so it was just such a huge thing for everybody to kind of go through, and to see them actually put it in a raid and implement facts from this current expansion towards a previous fight, and try to say, what if Dynamis was involved there too? And then it kind of pieces all together, and it gets people pretty involved in it. So that was a really good decision, I think.
It's interesting because the bits were already there. It's just kind of a retcon because the original story, he's trying to figure out why you can always win when you shouldn't be able to, according to his calculations. And so in retrospect, now that we know that Dynamis exists, we know that's the reason. So they kind of just applied it to the already existing story in an interesting way.
And then they made it gold. Go ahead.
I'll just say that as Ninthman, we spend some of the downtime talking about like lore stuff just because it's interesting, and Darth knows way too fucking much lore about this game, man.
Part of my personal prep, like even before the interview where Yoshi P said there was going to be everything Omega had ever seen, I went ahead and I researched every single fight. I made notes on every single mechanic that has existed within the Omega Raid series. I watched lore videos. I redid the story in New Game Plus, all that shit. So
yeah, and that sort of documentation actually ends up being very helpful, not even just for like trying to dissect some of the lore implications or trying to dissect, what could possibly give us hints as to if there would be a puzzle mechanic, but is also just helpful as a refresher because they, especially for the earlier phases, they just reuse a lot of mechanics. They reuse a lot of ability names, and that can kind of point us in the right direction as to what particular things are. Stuff like Beyond Defense and Pile Pitch, we understand at a fundamental level what those are, even if the specifics are sort of tweaked to fit the ultimate mechanic which is currently being presented.
Tweaked is a word.
Real side note here, I thought it was kind of funny. Karif told me he probably wouldn't be talking too much just overall, but I see why. It's because he wants to shitpost in chat.
Okay, wait, I can explain. Yeah, I am like the least lore in tuned person. I stopped paying attention after the Moonbread person with the Skrillex haircut died. Like, I don't know anything about FF14 lore.
Did you say the Skrillex haircut?
Yeah.
Moon Burrito, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, see, someone knows.
These guys, this raid group was making fun of me for knowing Louis Sua's name at one point.
Really?
I'm not kidding.
I was not making
Wait,
fun.
you were not?
Du fromage.
You guys are about to get shamed out of popularity here.
I am a lore master, actually.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, okay, so going into this fight, the other part, of course, mechanically, how they designed this fight and everything else, we had no clue what to expect going in. We do our best efforts to kind of prep for it and everything. But then you go in for that first part of the fight. I feel like Phase 1 was a kind of a brutal start. We didn't really get, like, too much consistency past Phase 1 until near the end of day 1, right?
Never.
I mean,
we never had consistency on Phase 1. I don't think any group does.
You can make the argument that Phase 1 is kind of the most difficult part of the whole Ultimate in its own way. Obviously, Phase 5 is the most mechanically intensive, but every other Ultimate, Phase 1 can be autopiloted so easily. You look at Living Liquid, I mean, you just have to make sure you don't, like, completely blow up your Jackdaw, otherwise it's the same every time. You look at Twin, some minor variation with Liquid Hell and Hatches, but you can autopilot that. You look at DSR, really you can do with your eyes completely closed.
Both the Dorboss and Thornton one.
And Uwu, God, Uwu's like almost entirely static with Garuda. So you have these 4 previous very static Phase 1s, and now you get this thing where what you get is completely random. Your movement is completely different every single pull, from standing still to running across the arena. And it murders your consistency on that first phase, and that adds, honestly, I don't think saying hundreds of pulls to your overall pull count is overstating it.
It's not.
It's that impactful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty modest, actually.
We also spent like 50 pulls reprogging P1 to try and fix the consistency.
I'm pretty sure it was more than that, but yeah.
I love the progress graph on FF logs where we just have this like chunk of like 50 pulls where it's like all P1, maybe a little bit of P2, and it's like in the middle of P4 prog.
We did have those 5 P6 pulls in a row though, so you know.
That was Pog.
Yeah, dude. Like, real quick on that topic too. I mean, you guys, I think were the first ones to get to P6, right? Or am I wrong? On stream. Well, I mean, yeah, on stream. So you guys became like the thing about the World Race is that you guys are all conduits for us to see the fight without actually having to do the work of doing it. So, like, that's the fun part about being in the spectator seat, is that you kind of get to experience it while not really having to be good at the game. So, and it was so great. You guys basically revealed the transition and what everything was going to look for us. And I think all the players, all the people watching definitely appreciated it. And it's such just a journey going through this stuff. How did you guys feel when you saw that cutscene?
Relief.
You're like, thank you.
Managed to get there.
Yeah. It gave you like a second to breathe. I guess you guys weren't, everybody was complaining about P8S, not P8S, E8S, the cutscene there, kind of like distracting from the fight. But I think in the Ultimate, you're like, thank God I can take a second.
This fight in particular, like you just got done with P5, which is some of the most tight mechanical checks that we've had to do in a fight in a long time, and it's just a moment to relax. It's also just a good cutscene if you care about the lore.
It's kind of weird.
Happy to see Alpha.
Yeah.
My son.
I'll eat you. Okay, thanks.
Where chicken?
Yeah.
I love his expression as he's getting like eaten. He turns to the group and he's like, "Oops."
Yeah. He's like, you guys would have won if I didn't run over here, but whoopsie.
So we won anyway. It's fine, and we saved him.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I think Omega kind of has. If we were doing like score count here, Omega got about a little over 1,000 on you. But and that's kind of interesting. Is that like all of the if you look at most of the kills, and you look at the data for them, most teams were around 1,000 or more pulls overall. What was DSR?
We were just under 1,000 for DSR.
Really?
Yeah. I would expect them to be kind of similar because we were mostly blind for this one, and we were entirely blind for DSR. So.
Yeah.
I think someone said Neverland had like 600 something pulls for DSR, but in the Omega protocol they had over 1,000.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that comes down to the P1 that we mentioned. Like you're just gonna add a couple hundred to this particular phase 1.
Yeah. I also think like pull count alone is not the best statistic, right? Because like how much a pull is worth depends on where it wipes.
Yeah.
And in the name of our 9th man during Sigma, -12.
Oh man. All right. Well, going back to phase 1-2 here. Would you say basically it was Panda Crater? It was like the main thing for that? No.
We went loop much more than we did Panda Crater.
Yeah, blaster tethers.
And it's honestly just people zoning out for like a second and like not remembering their number.
Because it's like they assign you a number, and that number is gonna throw you off because you look at the number at the start of mechanics, like, oh, 1. Okay, I'm the number 1 tower, and then you go take a tether, and you're like, oops, I guess I fucked up. And this happens with all 4 numbers. You're like, am I the tower or the tether? And this is literally how that mechanic kills pulls. Is that you don't completely read your debuff, you accidentally take a tether when you're supposed to take a tower, or you take a tower when you're supposed to take a tether, and then doomed. So
add on to it that it's random. So like if you have a priority system set up, you need to check if you like. I need to look at all the supports and see if I have the same number as any other support, and then I swap the direction I'm looking for the whole mechanic. It's a whole mess. And then even if you're doing it right, like you can accidentally grab a tether or just barely not make it to your tower because you didn't have a sprint up, or someone else is like off in Narnia and you have to not hit them with the blaster tether explosion, and it's like there's just so many individual things that can go wrong on top of it being random.
Well, I'm gonna have to deal with that for like 6 months. So
and then after that is Panda Crater, which has similar randomness and though not quite as drastic, but then also adds in mechanical checks and a lot of caster downtime, and it's just it's nonsense.
And even in program loop, that was the first example of them doing this kind of like really mean thing that they did throughout the ultimate, where they will assign you something. For program loop, they assign you your inline number 1 through 4, but that number goes away once you take your tower. So if you don't remember what the number was when you're doing your tether, you wipe. And they did this for PlayStation as well. Like they show you your color, and then it goes away 2 seconds later. So to keep myself from like inting during that mechanic and to keep myself awake, as soon as I'm seeing what number I am saying verbally out loud to myself without push to talk held down, I am tether number 1. And then once I do my tether, I would then say I'm tower number 3. Like, just anything you can do to remember what it is that you're supposed to be doing helped a lot with consistency there.
I think it was especially mean during the first PlayStation, because what they make you do for the first PlayStation, they give you what your symbol is, and then they make you do a mechanic completely unrelated to the symbol. You don't have to look at it for the first whatever MNF are doing. And then they make you remember it immediately after.
Yeah, it's literally the worst possible setup they could have come up with.
That's where the echo macros were born, which I'm so happy to see that, like, everybody did that. Like, it wasn't just me. Like, everybody did that as soon as they got to P2. I was watching so many other people on stream do that.
Can you guys explain the echo macros real quick?
If you type /E in chat and then type anything else, it will echo it into your chat box only, as opposed to /P where it would say it to the whole party. So basically, I set up 4 macros such that if you get blue, purple, red, or green, I would click the corresponding macro button, and it would just type in my chat, I'm blue. And then when I do the first part of the mechanic, that is agnostic of what my color is. Once that's done, I'd look at chat to remember what color I was, and it just takes one mental step away from having to do the mechanic.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't actually know about that. So you basically would have to set up like hotkeys or buttons that would go for each one, and you just kind of press it. But what if like, I guess you guys make it to where it's just party chat only when you guys are ready to, right? So you don't have like link shells and FC chat coming up everywhere.
That would be a better idea than what I did.
Oh, okay.
There's actually a funny story about there's actually a funny story about those macros going to party chat. I think when we were doing prep. Oh my god! We have a specific macro that we usually use for speeds that will basically, it's /status off, so it removes all of like whatever buffs that you want to click off. You just there's a command in chat, so we use it for clicking off regens and stuff like that. And Kareth has a macro for that, and in addition to clicking off those buffs, he also says DWOW. and he posts it into whatever chat he does. It's usually party chat, but when we were doing UCOP speeds, he was like, "Why am I not seeing DWOW in party chat?" And he was spamming that macro. He was spamming the DWOW into the novice network. He was spamming this chat command to the novice network. So there are like just a million lines of him just spamming just a random shit into the novice network.
Did they kick you out?
They did, but I was back the next day.
You menace.
I keep forgetting a novice network exists, to be completely honest with you too.
It's for the best.
Yeah, because I think like the whole mentor thing didn't like pan out very well in terms of like getting people who were all kind of on the same page with do it. I don't
even know what they're doing.
Yeah.
At least on Adamantoise, 90% of the content I personally see in the Novice Network is mentors complaining rather than anything else.
Yeah.
I was only in there because I had the returner flower because I hadn't logged into the game for months.
Nice. Oh. All right. So P2. What are your thoughts on P2?
It's fine.
Fun phase. It's pretty fun.
Left is left.
Left is left.
PlayStation gave us a lot of trouble initially because we were trying to find patterns. We even tried proximity baiting it, like how Death of the Heavens worked in DSR.
Mm-hmm.
But then we saw the stacks and we were like, surely there's some pattern here. There's no patterns in that mechanic. So, and also the positioning initially was like a little tight. We spent a little bit of time figuring out the exact positioning for that. Honestly, yeah, I think just the hardest part of phase 2 was just the PlayStation mechanic. The limit break segment was cool.
Pile pitch codex.
Oh my god,
we gotta talk about that and like its continued impact throughout the fight. That was so funny. Like,
yeah, you talk about it.
For those that don't know how it works, so there's during the part where there's the passage of arms and like a bunch of limit break stuff going on. The second mechanic, Limitless Synergy, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, there's one of the clones on the side of the arena does Beyond Defense, which is just like a dive towards a player, and then Pile Pitch, which is a stack. And if you get hit by both, you die. The Beyond Defense part, the initial dive, picks at random from the two closest players to that clone. And it took us so long to figure that out. We thought it was closest person. We thought it was true random. Like, there's so many, like, it took us, we basically just sacrificed someone and kept going past to see the next phase and ignoring the fact that mechanic was killing us just because we couldn't figure out what it was actually doing.
It's like a controlled random.
I don't think we actually figured it out until we were in P4.
I remember sack stratting past Beyond Defense until like the end of day 3 of Prague.
Wow.
And then it turns out in P5 you actually like really need to figure out what it's doing because it shows up as part of Run Dynamis Delta, so you need to do it properly at that point. But it confused us for so long. We were just like, what is going on with this? How it's different than how it works in the original fight. It showed up in 012 phase 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know. It felt at the time. Now that we know how it works, it's fine. But at the time, it felt really like obtuse and random and like.
He is ignoring me.
We were we were so confused about how it worked. We called it the Pile Pitch Codex.
On the bright side, it absolutely created some of the best moments in Prague. I've got a couple
He's ignoring me
as local footage from when we would like have somebody just stand right in front of Omega and try to bait it, and then he would just like leave. He would just ignore their existence and just target somebody completely different.
That's hilarious, man. This is all helping me. So I appreciate you guys giving me this information, because I'm gonna need to know this soon. The one thing about phase 2 that I think was kind of interesting, and I think it was Momo's group that did this first, is they stopped caring about the flares. Did you guys? I can't remember. Did you guys keep doing the flare mechanic correctly, or did you stop?
Yes.
Yeah.
We knew that need to change it.
Yeah, we knew that you like they don't hurt very much, and you can kind of cheese past it a little bit. But we were just like, what we're doing works. We don't need more damage, so we don't care. We'll just keep doing what we're doing for now.
Yeah, we would
And then
end up holding
they
at
would-
the end of the phase anyways.
Yeah, like we were doing too much anyway, so.
Mm-hmm.
The type of thing that you would be unlikely to come up with in Prague, because you see a flare marker. Like, here's how the logical flow this is going to go in your head. You see a flare marker, you realize, okay, that's proximity damage. We're in an ultimate. This is going to do a ton of damage.
Surely.
Yeah, surely. But the thing with a lot of flare and proximity markers in this game is they are essentially binary. Either you are too close to them and it does absurd damage that instantly kills you, or you're far enough away from them and it does very little damage. So we initially spread the flares, we see that they do very little damage, and we just assume it's because we spread them out enough. You never really screw around with them to see that, oh, they just don't do damage, even if you're right on top of them.
We actually found out that they did very little damage by accident. It was a pull. I was playing Summoner, and there was a moment where I was like, I have my Ifrit dash, and I need to use it. And I pressed it at just the wrong second, and I brought the flare in the middle of the group. And much to our relief, we did not die. We actually, we basically took 0 damage. Well, it wasn't 0 damage, but we didn't die from like a flare in the middle of the party. And then we've had multiple other occurrences of people dashing in a little bit too soon, and then there's a flare in the middle of the arena, and we just don't die. So the mechanic is, it's like, it can essentially be ignored. So it wasn't really surprising to me, or I guess any of us, when we saw the flares in the middle thing.
Yeah, I find the lenience of Limitless Synergy to be extremely jarring when compared to Party Synergy, because Party Synergy has a lot of very specific positioning requirements because of mid glitch and remote glitch. And messing those things up can just instantaneously kill you. Versus when you compare that to Limitless Synergy, you can literally put a flare marker in the middle of the group and the mechanic doesn't care. You can literally 2-stack the pile pitch, and the mechanic, okay, you took a bit more damage than you normally would, but you shrug it off, you move on. Like, the amount of flexibility, the amount of lenience, and the amount of room for error that you get in Limitless Synergy, I think is very jarring compared to a lot of mechanics in the rest of the fight.
Even Cosmo Memory, the raid wide at the end of Limitless Synergy, doesn't hurt nearly as much as I was expecting it to. That's supposed to be the cap of the phase of the mechanic, and it's just it kind of tickled a little bit, I guess.
To expand on this, that phase does so little damage, it actually started getting suspicious when we were walled on P4. We were a couple of us were thinking, is the key to getting past blue screen somewhere in phase 2? Because nothing does any damage and it doesn't make any sense. When we first saw those flares, the first thing I'm thinking of is, okay, their damage profile is going to be like the Giga Flare's Edge in DSR P7, where if you are half a meter too close, you take 80,000 damage through mid and it just kills you. That's what we were expecting, and what we got was just, I don't know.
I think it does 30. I think the flares do 35k when you're on top of them.
Yeah.
Ish, yeah.
I think it's a fine mechanic, though, taking that out of it, in terms of what you're doing, it's fine. It just, I don't know. We almost wish it did more damage.
I wonder if that was intentional or if that was just overlook on the damage. I mean, I can only guess if there was some sort of intentional reasoning behind that. It was to say, all right, well, these mechanics are going to be lighter because it's an overall stressful fight, and then identifying where it's not really as stressful throughout the fight could be beneficial to a group, maybe, but I don't know.
They made it lenient
because of how things did so little damage.
If they made it lenient, it was definitely because they show up back again at the very end of the fight, and that's probably a stressful time. They're like, we shouldn't make this too fail-statey because it would suck to wipe right there. That's my guess.
Yeah. Well, going past this phase, right? Going into phase 3. This is the last, I guess, final Omega before we get into all the crazy stuff. And you had the Hello World there, which was, I guess, the big mechanic for that portion. How'd you guys feel about phase 3 just overall?
I love it. Best phase, easy.
Very fun. Fun to solve, fun to execute.
Yeah, Hello World is okay, well, we're gonna ignore the problems with the buff and debuff cap for a second. But just in terms of doing the mechanic, it's fun to figure out, and once you know it, it's still fun to do every pull. Like it's not boring. It's not too much brain effort. It's just satisfying to execute.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it was just basically a cycle of the same mechanics for a while.
Yeah, but in an interesting way. Like there's four each set of towers. There's 4 positions to be in, left or right for each of those positions, and each player will do each one of the 4 possibilities once. That's the mechanic.
And it was a very good spiritual successor to Die from Grace, which was also a very good mechanic.
Yes.
I'm glad they kind of took that concept, which was shown to just be really good in DSR, and then put their own twist on it for Omega.
Yeah, and then they did the thing in P5, which was the bad part about DSR, where the boss shows up, autos you twice, busters, and then leaves.
Yeah.
Cringe.
Yeah, we were definitely happy with P3 and it being targetable the whole time, because we were a little bit scared between 012 Phase 2's original Hello World, it being a targetable boss and that being a very good part of that mechanic. And then P8 and like High Concept being similar to the Hello Worlds, but the boss not being targetable, and we were quite frustrated with that fact for both in Prague and in reclears and speeds. So we were very happy to see that they kept it targetable during this Hello World.
Yeah.
Oversampled, I think, was also a really cool way to end the phase. It's pretty creative what they did with it. I think I remember hating it at the time. I'm like, facing on perfect 90-degree angles is like so finicky and it's weird depending on your control scheme. But now, looking back in hindsight, oversampled is quite wonderfully done.
A lot of fun to watch players try to execute it. And you could see the screens just pop back and forth in a whole bunch of different directions really quick. You're like, are they going to get it? Are they going to get it?
Yeah, Kamachi.
Facing it at the last second is really sasatisfying.
Yeah, that mechanic is the most fun mechanic to greed in this game.
It's scary.
You know that person next to you is just looking at you like sweating. Right?
Yeah. And then there's also like fun little Easter eggs about it. Like I was playing Gunbreaker for most of this prog later on, and you have Double Down and Bow Shock, which are damage dealing skills that don't target the enemy. So I can just face it and then press those skills and it doesn't turn me, and I don't even have to think about it. And so there's stuff like that, and it's really it was a lot. It ended up being a much better mechanic than we thought on initially getting it, which Kelly touched
on. You know, I do want to. So a couple other things. Is this the phase where they took out the auto attacks? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh
my god, bro!
We need to do that in P5 too.
The auto attack.
Can we go through our history, our evolution of our strats for that? Because that was hilarious. That was
we need to.
I think what did we start?
We initially went to the wall, and then we were like, surely there's a way to like figure this out. So we just tried benning Callie, and then it autoed Sura. So then we were like, okay, let's all go south. Let's heal everyone up, and then it would still like bonk someone. And then we just eventually settled on
person that wasn't topped.
It even involved some 9th man aggro research and going into instances and trying to take aggro with skills that were being done while the boss was untargetable to see if any of those could generate aggro.
The answer was no. When they hotfixed it and we still hadn't quite cleared yet, I was like the tiniest bit disappointed, honestly.
Same.
Easier in January, right?
Yeah, for people who weren't tuning in, like for some reason the boss would always aggro onto me there. So our initial strat to deal with it was just Benny the Dragoon and let him take an auto. And that worked for like an entire raid day until one fateful pull I just decided to walk over to the Fizz range and auto them instead.
Yeah, I got bonked. I sit on a technical there, like I would precast technical for that phase, and so I get bonked and we lose technical.
The funniest part about that, I mean, I looked into it to see if there was anything like the tanks could do. There's literally no way for the tank to get aggro fast enough on the boss if it decides to just hit someone else.
Yeah, it was like a 6-frame auto attack or something crazy like that.
Literally, Provoke has like less than half of a second activation time, and that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that was a good meme. That was a really
very good meme.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is we could hit on that a little bit too. One of the big issues with the the buffs and debuffs and the caps and all that other stuff. I'm sure it wasn't intentional at all. But it did add a little bit of a level of thought of having to do priority with buffs, I would guess too, right?
We were fortunate enough to not run into it at all. Like we
Really?
just lucked into the fact that our composition didn't quite have enough. Like we were originally like we were considering White Mage versus Astro, for example. If we had an Astro, we would have absolutely run into the problem. And like I know Monk had the problem as well.
Yeah, a
so.
lot of the people who switched had Astro Monk on their team, and so one of the biggest switches a lot of the groups that finished before us made were Dancer for Machinist, because that got rid of 2 buffs, one party wide buff and a couple of buffs on the dance partner.
We got lucky; it just wasn't a problem for us at all.
That's fortunate, but I mean, then that like starts like pushing out other jobs just because. They weren't.
Yeah.
So I am curious if they say anything or do anything about that coming in the future. I mean they have to. I don't know if they're just going to change the way to design fights and everything, so the buff issues aren't as big of a deal. But I don't know.
I more anticipate changes to how certain jobs operate. They may start pushing. Instead of giving players buffs for particular things, they may start pushing some of those mechanics toward the job gauge instead, or just removing buffs from certain things entirely. Because there's a lot of like, especially Dancer has a lot of kind of filler buffs that I think if they wanted to, they could probably consolidate from a technical perspective. Like anyone who is hit by a standard or technical gets 2 buffs, one of them being the damage buff and then the other one being Esprit, so that when they perform weapon skills or spells, they will generate meter for the Dancer. And I feel, especially with like between that and Meditative Brotherhood, which grants meditate stacks to the monk, among a bunch of others, I wonder if they're planning on consolidating some of those down to being 1 buff to sort of alleviate the issue, or moving a lot of those kind of particular timers or job actions to the job gauge over using a buff for a lot of that stuff.
I also wonder if they could have implemented the mechanic without taking up so much real estate in the buff and debuff bar. Like, if with how it's designed and how it's based off of the original O12 version, I don't necessarily think they could have. But like, there's a couple frames in the mechanic where you like the mechanic itself gives you like 10 buffs and debuffs total for just like a fraction of a second, but it feels a little absurd.
I really gotta turn off my chat thing. We're not doing this event anymore. I guess this is technically part of the event, right? Not that big of a deal. We can
sort of, yeah. I mean, that's the sponsored chair.
Yeah.
We do love the chair.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Real quick tangent here. Is the chair kind of what you think sold most people on the event? Because I mean, like that was when we were in discussions and everything. I was talking about, okay, I want to make sure that we have just a good prize pack for whoever is giving us that point of view and able to be a part of the event. And so most of all of the sponsorship stuff went straight towards that prize pack. And the chair was like supposed to, I guess, be the highlight of it. And I'm very happy that it definitely seems like it was the highlight for you guys.
Yeah, I think we would have been like really happy to do this regardless of whether or not it was sponsored, but just the fact that a couple of us needed a new chair just turned out to be a really great coincidence.
Yeah. Because you think about it a lot. I mean, people will have their own headsets sometimes, their mouse, their keyboards and everything. They may need new ones, and that's really great for all the people who need new ones. But the one thing a lot of people don't go out to do is get a chair. Because they're like, okay, maybe that's the expense that's going overboard a little bit. So at least that's what I think. So by the way, when you guys get chairs, you guys should all sit in it, take selfies, and be like, great event, thanks guys.
I love taking selfies, don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, bro.
There are people at my job that play FF14, and there's no way I'm letting them know who. No way.
Just take a picture of the chair and then put it on Twitter. Yeah, that works.
I'll put the cat in the chair for you.
That works too.
Let's go.
This is going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but what Kareth just said kind of reminded me of it. This is the first time I've ever seen so much engagement in the world race for something related to 14 from communities that had nothing to do with it. So, for example, like I don't leave old Discords that I'm in. I just kind of don't. So I'm in a lot of Discords for games that I used to play, like Destiny 2 and Guild Wars. And in like 4 of those Discords, I had people figuring out that that dude on stream playing Dragoon was me, and then messaging me to talk about top. And I've never seen anything like that happen before in kind of like the history of this community. So that was really, really cool to see this time around.
It's going, man.
Who no longer play this game are still following the race.
Yeah, I mean, being able to give some kind of visibility to the race is really doing pretty good. So granted, there's the whole thing with the whole negative side of some stuff that fell out afterwards, which we can get into later. But the fact that it definitely feels like we're still expanding is amazing. And I never know when we're just going to hit that idle point. But like I knew this was going to be like one of the biggest events, at least from my point of view, with doing the stream stuff and everything else. But I didn't think it was going to grow as much as it did, just overall. So I'm happy. I'm happy that this is getting to a good point. And I'm glad that we could finally put on an event. Like, this is the first time we've ever given a prize. Granted, the Namasu bath mats did go to the Otternuts group. for when not for this, but for the Criterion Savage, because they got world first in Criterion Savage, and I had some bath mats I could give away, and they won those. So
you have angered Bagel Goose.
I'm sorry, Bagel.
People had to work. We would have taken that.
Oh my
God. It was free, man. Actually,
it was free.
You could have got it. You could have had a Namazoon bath mat. I even tweeted it out. It was there, but it was so small.
Could have been.
Yeah, maybe I'll get some more in the future, and I'll make sure they're in the next race or something like that. But all right, yeah. So phase 3 going on to phase 4, which is actually where people start thinking, hey, maybe there's like a mystery here, right?
Yeah, we thought there's no way that the puzzle is just a 20% damage check. There is no way they would do that, right?
It's because we got to the phase the first time and got it to like 50%. The first time we saw the blue screen cast finish, it was like 50% seems like a ridiculous hurdle to hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
keep going.
And it just like it ended up leading us down like the thought process of like, okay, is it a tank LB? Is it some puzzle in phase 2? Is it like, are we missing a damage buff somewhere? And especially since like the first 3 phases are a tight execution check, and blue screen effectively requires you to melee LB to get past it. Like, you have to not use your LB to get there. You basically can't have any deaths until you get comfortable, like super comfortable, and we're on like day 5. Then we can maybe do it with a death. But
you can LB P3 and then buff in P4. But
yeah, that kind of thing as well. But the point is that it did not hint towards being a damage check at all. We really didn't think it was, and what ended up happening for our team, at least, is that's about the time that we ended up taking to redo our Pantocrator strats, and get phase 1 more consistent. And we did some job swaps as well, thinking that it might be for damage, and then we let other teams figure it out for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We did some damage calculations, and we're like, how are we supposed to kill this thing? Surely we have to do something else. So we were templating a lot.
The single biggest hint was Neverland having to come off the leaderboard temporarily.
Well, they came off as soon as like past the 20, like right when they're getting the 20% or so, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're done. They came off, something changed.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I think, gave it away to a lot of groups.
Obvious.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm still pissed about the debugger debuffs. Like, I just feel like there was no reason to make them not cleanse on, I guess. I don't know, like when you
critical error.
You could cleanse them all on critical error, I guess. other than to just be obtuse with blue screen, which, like, fair enough. Like, they definitely do things. The encounter designers do deliberately decide to be obtuse sometimes to make the encounter harder. That's not necessarily wrong, but it kind of got me a little pissed off. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, I think it's pretty funny because they did so many things to like throw you off, like the stack in Hello World being stackable with like more than 2 people.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the debuffs being blue and it be called blue screen. I mean,
Yeah.
Let's talk about critical sync, I think, because this is something most people that following the race like didn't even pick up on that at the time. So, critical synchronization bug in the original Hello World, and we went back and tested this during Prague, is a stack that only hits 2 people. If you have more than 2 people in the stack, it will just completely ignore 1 player. And so when we were trying to figure out how to do blue screen, one of the things we were thinking about is, can we get all of the debugger debuffs on all 8 players? Because you will actually be missing 2 people with the synchronization debugger. With the way you do the mechanics. So what we tried to do is see, does the ultimate version of critical sync hit more than 2 players? And it does. And so I tested that. We saw that it hits 3, and we're like, surely this has something to do with getting past blue screen, and it just didn't. Like, they deliberately decided to make the stack hit a different number of people just to be like obtuse about the mechanic solution.
Yeah, because they know that will fixate on like any open end that we notice the moment something becomes like even remotely like a wall in progression.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was just some mechanic designer was like, "Oh, back when I made this, we made it this way, and I didn't have time to fix it. Let's fix it now, guys. That'll be a great idea."
It's possible.
Oh, wait a minute.
Well, I mean, like, it kind of feels like going in a corn maze, right? And you go and you hit a dead end, you're like, well, okay, just check that off and keep going. And you literally have no way of knowing that's a dead end until you get there. And so I think that's with trying to figure out some of this other stuff, too, is that, like, possibly if we go down this path, we might be able to make it out, but no. And I don't, again, like, I'm on this edge, and I do believe, like, some things in here were definitely thought out in a way that they were doing it to try to trick everybody. But at the same time, I feel like some things might have just been slightly overlooked. Like the buff and debuff stuff, that had to have been overlooked. 100%. But I am very curious about how these buffs function and how many open ends there are out there. Because it was literally everybody just trying to figure out how to get past that phase until, we saw a team or 2 get through it. And we're like, okay, easy enough DPS check. It felt a little bit sad, to be honest with you, when we found out it was just a DPS check.
Yeah, it was very disappointing.
That was based, actually. Screw puzzles.
Bro.
I'll never forgive them for Ultima, dude. If you didn't do that fight blind, you were robbed.
Yeah.
I will say it was a good lesson learned. We talked about this after Prague. We're trying to collect everyone's thoughts on like what happened, what can we do better, what should we keep in mind for next time. And one of the main takeaways was, if they ever give us a path to just push damage, like if we can ever optimize damage and just optimize our gameplay more cleanly at the current wall of the fight, fully explore and exhaust that opportunity before turning to like puzzle obscure solutions or whatever.
Yeah, always try the simple solution first.
Yeah, I mean,
don't dismiss it because it is the simple solution. Try it.
I think. Go ahead.
I think at some point, I think it was Kumi said, like, it is suspicious that looking at the math, like, on a clean run, you would push it just under 20% with LB3, is what I think he said, right?
Yeah.
And I think that should have been...
we probably should have heeded those words.
Yeah. Base Kumi.
I think, like, the big thing is, like, when you're doing this stuff, the goal is to always have one clean run. Be like, okay, all the mechanics were executed to what we know properly. No one died to anything stupid. We got on the DPS that we needed. And if you hit that wall at that point, then you're like, okay, now I need to start figuring out something else. But it was a pretty tight check, I guess, right? And so that's kind of where a lot of the question marks came up.
Yeah, we're like, surely they wouldn't put such a tight check.
It requires you to LB3, basically.
Yeah.
I think we thought it was even tighter than it ended up being as well, because we didn't quite realize it was a threshold, right? We thought we had to kill him.
Right.
So it's nearly impossible even now to do that. Like, it's theoretically possible, I would guess, but yeah. So even looking at like, even with the fact that it's a 20% threshold, you need to LB in either blue screen or the previous phase and hold your twos, and like it. Yeah, we talked a little bit about how it required such mechanical checks and consistency in the first 3 phases, and that's why we thought it might not be a DPS check and stuff like that.
So, besides that, after you guys figured it out, you went into P5, and then everything turned gold. What were your guys' thoughts on going into P5 for the first time?
When we got yes, as soon as we saw Delta, I'm like, this is literally just mechanical vomit, which was, I mean, that sounds gross, but it was actually pretty fun and funny to solve. Solving Delta was a lot of fun, in my opinion.
Delta was a great mechanic to just analyze because of the sheer number of components in it that all kind of had to be solved in order, and some of them tied together a little bit. But if you're asking, what were we thinking, you know, as soon as we got to P5 and we were starting to solve Delta, specifically the answer to that question is, please let this be the hardest mechanic in the fight.
Yes.
That is what we were thinking.
Yeah, it definitely felt like, I know a lot of people like to talk about this every time there's an ultimate, but it definitely felt like the wormhole of the ultimate. And thinking back at it definitely is. The 8, like, depending on like what you get, you're doing 8 different things. And it's a long drawn out mechanic with a lot of execution checks. Very tough and fun mechanic.
It was also really funny, I think, how while we were kind of in the process of progging the mechanic, we were constantly kind of flipping between, oh, okay, so green is really the hard part, and then the blues are literally free, and then we, halfway through that, we were like, oh, actually, the greens are super easy, baiting these hands is super easy, it's the blues that are the hard part of this, and we just kind of kept flipping back and forth between what's actually the hard part and what's actually the easy part.
Turns out it's all pretty hard.
Yeah, I think if you evaluate everything, it's very fair to say that Delta is easily a contender for hardest mechanic in the game of any encounter.
Nice. Looking forward to it. I
do want to give a shout out though. While we were solving Delta, we got some friends over at Billy that we didn't know we had, because during our stream, we were being restreamed to Billy for like 20k viewers.
Oh, wow.
Which was, we didn't even realize this was going on, and we found out we were being restreamed, and there was a restreamer. His name is Ku Sensei. He's like an educational Billy streamer for Final Fantasy, and he was basically just following our streams the entire time, and we watched him, and he basically like gave us like on a silver platter like an idea for a Delta strat for the Hello World portion, and we basically ran away with that, and that's how we like basically got through the end of Delta with few hitches essentially. So that was really cool. Shout out to Ku Sensei and Billy.
That's actually really interesting. I didn't know Billy had that much of a following in Final Fantasy 14.
We didn't either.
Yeah.
Because every once in a while when the race happens, I'll get stream submissions with that, and it doesn't really work well with multi-Twitch, which is kind of the tool that we use to show multiple streams at the same time. So it's a little bit more difficult and unwieldy. But I mean, there's like a handful of just like Billy streamers out there, and is it even the I don't know the legality and everything of playing Final Fantasy 14.
In China they have their own servers that are a couple patches behind, and then some of them will play in JP anyway, with like VPNs and stuff. So
okay.
They
is that technically allowed?
I mean,
have no idea.
Yeah, but I mean, a couple of the teams like in the race were Chinese teams on JP servers.
Yeah.
Like no CCHH.
Yep.
Oh, my man.
But yeah, it's definitely allowed from the game's perspective.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So I don't know. That is very interesting.
But like we've talked with them a little bit. Like we had an interview, a translated interview with Ku Sensei after, and they a lot of the Chinese community was talking about how like the world race is really neat because they're behind in patches and stuff, like them watching us gives them the opportunity to experience the prog like we do in a way that they don't get to do themselves. So it was really it was a fantastic experience for us to find out that this community existed, and then let them help us pretty drastically as well in the race itself.
Yeah. I mean, that was pretty awesome, and like this is kind of where the world race is going, right? We're gonna have a lot of these Billy streams, I think, going forward. I'm gonna have to figure out how all that stuff works. It's, man, hosting this stuff, especially when we get into like the giveaways and we're doing all this other stuff. You're dealing with so many countries, so many things. You got to figure out, if you are going to do something, how do you transition those across the world? And luckily we could do that stuff kind of with Corsair, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of exciting to see where it's going. But that being said, going back kind of to Phase 5 again, I think one of the big standout things with that, of course, was the buffs coming up. How did you guys feel about seeing those buffs?
The Dynamis buffs?
Yeah.
I think we saw them, and it actually didn't take us very long to figure out exactly what we needed to do with them. We saw that they gave us like 6 apiece for the mechanic. Then we figured there were like 4 instances of times that they're giving us that mechanic, like 6 stacks. 6 times 4 is 24. Divide that amount of 8 people. That's 3 stacks per person, and we rolled with that.
Even after the first trio, it's pretty apparent that it's going to be that number, because it's the lowest number of like common, where 6 and 4 or 6 and 8, their multiples meet up.
We even had we had a poll where I think one of our members got 3 stacks of the buff, and then they attempted to get 1 more, and they just didn't get.
It was you.
Yeah, it was me. Yeah, I had 3 stacks, and I got hit by another like jump of Hello World, and I didn't get another stack, and I was like, okay, well, we know for sure now.
We love Dynamis.
Yeah, specifically, we didn't quite know that for certain until very far into the phase, because we thought there were going to be, I think, 3 major trios, but the second one gives you 2 sets of Hello Near Far. So like our approach to it before we realized that there is actually going to be enough to get all players 3 stacks was we just do the mechanic in a way that prevents everybody from exploding until it becomes a problem.
Which is the best way to approach puzzle mechanics, but like this for sure. It's just until it actually walls you, just keep going, and so you can gather as much information as possible. And then it turns out we figured it out before we even hit the wall. So
yeah.
For any of us that remember our Asphodelis prog, we do not solve things until the game makes us do it. No more wind tethers. No more wind tether.
Wind tether. I'm dead.
Oh. I mean, this was also something that was kind of, it was just so quick. It was hard to catch until you start, getting really hard into the analysis of it, right? Because you see that little pop and then everyone just explodes and dies, right? I'm trying to remember the first time that we saw it. Was that with Otternuts?
It would have been, I think, right?
Yeah, because they did that like at 3 in the morning while we were asleep one night.
Yeah, the visual and numerical garbling of what exactly was happening with it was a problem for a while, because the initial debuffs explode in such a big spread that if they hit anybody else, everything's on fire, there's explosions, everybody then has magic vulns, you can't get any meaningful data from how much damage they took. So it wasn't until people were able to start spreading out everybody enough such that nothing was overlapping, were we able to see, it actually like bounces more than once to subsequent players. And then with a lot of help from our friends over at Billy, we were able to put together a strategy that actually resolved that.
That's crazy. Now, would you think that it's would you consider them like your 20,000th man?
Yeah, man.
In this situation, because that is pretty interesting. To have that many people over there just kind of thinking about this stuff. But at the same time, I mean, the teams over on Billy are trying to figure it all out too. It is interesting. I guess they were just kind of following you guys because you're overall ahead of all the teams streaming, right? Even the Billy ones, although those were pretty close.
In the final positions, do you mean?
Yeah.
So the rank 4 team on FFlog, Steel Fire, is common player.
Oh, okay.
Oh, they were behind us for most of the time, and then they killed it overnight when the P6 information was known.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But then, yeah, other than that, everyone's streaming was behind us.
Yeah, because I was thinking, like, and this is the thing, too, we had a whole bunch, and that's why I was kind of getting this confused, too, because I didn't know if the Billy service was, like, a Japanese service or a Chinese service, but now, for sure, I know. But part of this, you know, we had some of those teams sign up, but they weren't, like, agreeing to the streaming portion of it, and, like, the... you know, how we had the whole rules of keeping the streams clean and everything else like that. They were just putting their names in there, but without the restreaming part. And so I'm wondering, I kept looking back and I didn't see them sign up for it. And that's the only reason why. And that's why you guys, you know.
They also only streamed like phase 5, phase 6 after.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the majority of
Prague. There were 2 teams that we're aware of that were streaming the entirety of Prague, but yeah, they were almost always behind at least us and Otternuts, if not a couple other teams.
Right. So that's where it got really confusing, and that's why it took me a second, because I had to go back and look and be like, all right, let me fine-tooth comb this. Is there any chance a team that I didn't see on the sign-up sheet cleared, and just for some reason it wasn't announced anywhere? But the thing is, if you're doing a world race and you're going as fast as you can, when you clear like that, usually you make it known. Whether it's on FF logs or wherever it's going to be, it's known somewhere. And so that's why I felt pretty confident about it. But it did scare me a little bit, because this is the first time we're doing this reward and I don't want to mess it up. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going back through my forms just again because I have like a slight tinge of fear, because they did change their name at the last moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you guys won. No matter what, I mean, you guys won. even if I did it incorrectly, you guys won. There's no coming back. Let me see. It was common player, you said, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. There's no sign up at all for any of that. So, I don't want to fuck up that. So all right. So the other part of this is going through P5, and the thing with streaming, by the way, we did multiple days of everyone just looking and dying to P5 over and over and over again. And that's when like the streaming side on our end at least became more of like, all right, well, we can't talk about too much for a bit because we can try to get in there, analyze a little bit more a few times a day, but it came a little bit more laid back overall. Our production had a lot of fun with it, trying to figure out interesting ways to throw stuff onto the stream. But once P6 hit, which I think P6 happened after we finished stream, right? When did P6 hit? That was... That
sounds right, because I'm pretty sure it hit Monday for us.
Or at least on stream, yeah, it hit Monday, yeah.
So it happened while I was at work, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so P6 happened, and then, like, things got kind of exciting from there. We got to see the final form. I mean, once you guys got to P6, it was like, okay, this is the end. There's no P7. There's no anything. God.
It's pretty obvious, yeah.
Yeah.
Even just from the timestamps of how long the fight is.
We were still hoping for the sand room to show up at the end, but
were we?
I was. I never gave up hope. I never gave up hope
for one more phase. And that after you kill Alpha Omega, there he is. It's Joel.
Fish, just a spinning fish.
I was hoping, man.
Joel inside the level checker.
Unfortunate that they didn't add him, but you know,
we did actually call the Exaflare mechanic Exajoles.
Yeah,
in comms. Yeah,
we made him a new mechanic.
What was the other thing that you guys? Christmas for tethers, right?
We just called them green.
Oh, you just called
Christmas,
it green?
I think, was Otternuts.
Oh, was it Otternuts? Okay.
Yeah.
It's back to T. People would do like Christmas cruise. Green red tether over to Cruise Chaser.
That makes sense. But all right, P6. How do you guys feel about that phase in general?
It's so
That's
good.
A lot cooler.
It's
a lot
so
cooler
good.
than DSR, in my opinion. I think my favorite part that they did with P6 is that if you remember Dragon King Thornton from DSR, there are 3 mechanics in that whole phase, and then he loops. That's it. Yep. This fight, he definitely does mechanics more than one time, but he'll do it like combined with other mechanics and at different times to make the whole phase more interesting, so that when he repeats those mechanics, it's not just, oh, it's this mechanic again, I'm gonna do the exact same thing, right? There's, you know, different things you have to do.
It's definitely the most interesting. I don't know if I'd call it the most interesting final phase. I'd argue.
I mean,
argue Alex what T was. Yeah,
T was good. That final phase. Yeah.
But like. And so before it was kind of like a 50-50 mix, right? Because both UCOB and DSR have really boring, repetitive final phases.
No, Golden is so fun, man.
It's a shakiest check, and that's it. It's 3 mechanics. It's 3 mechanics repeated. Like it's no different than DSR. You are kidding yourself if you say otherwise.
But so that's true from a mechanical standpoint, but it's also just like this. The one consistent thing about all the final phases of the Ultimates is that they're spectacles, right? They're like it feels dramatic even if the mechanics are simple, and that's where
really...
we call them shakies checks, right? Like you're anticipating the clear, it's all dramatic and epic, and like you're just like you're sitting there shaking, like really nervous. What if I screw up this really basic simple mechanic?
Yeah, they really added on to the fucking the spectacle part of the final phase with the LB stuff that they did, and I thought that was so cool. And you know what? I'm really glad they finally gave us a purpose to use ranged LB.
Yes,
I got to
finally a reason.
Phys ranged relative mechanic.
There was that period of time where Titan or E4 Titan jails were ranged LB, but yeah. That's it.
I mean, DSR like
this is forced.
Before 4-target casted LB was discovered, people were using ranged LB to hit 4 meteors in DSR. But, yeah.
That's true.
I think from what I personally would have wanted from a final phase, P6 was nearly perfect. Very, very nearly perfect. And to me, it is basically just a better version of Golden Bahamut or Dragon King.
No. Golden is the best.
Okay, buddy.
That's just my opinion. I think it shows the evolution of their creativity, I guess, from the encounter designers to make sure that it's not just a boring looping phase.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd say I don't love about it was how obtuse Cosmodive was.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
that cost a lot of pulls to solve, and it was just kind of it's a little bit cruel.
Pulls. We spent so much time out of pull trying to piece together exactly how the targeting system worked for that,
and you can literally see it in every single one of like the blind teams kind of progression chart, where you can see the point where they hit Dragoon and then just wiped like 5 times in a row to it.
Yeah. That was fun. And then it turned out it's just 2 closest and randoms, and we're like, okay, I guess that's how it works.
I will definitely add as well the Bard LB Cosmo Arrow is like it hits that perfect sweet spot for me where it's not like in terms of actually doing it, it's not a very hard mechanic, but it's still satisfying to do. It's not basic. It doesn't have a brain dead solution like DSR Exaflares. And it's like it's a spectacle, so it's like all 3 things you like. It's not too hard, it's fun to do, and it's cool to watch.
Well, the best thing about Cosmo Arrow is that the first time it appears, you think it's like really easy.
Yeah.
And then you watch it happen, and it's like, oh god.
And then wave cannon.
Yeah, and then they combine it with wave cannon, and you have to learn a different dodge. I think that's the best part about it.
That was
I agree.
Cosmo Arrow also spawned my favorite diagram of the tier.
Oh,
no, that's oversampled.
Wait, I thought it was the oversampled.
I drew
oversampled is way better.
This one is my favorite child. Okay, I'm not listening to you guys.
I do think the most interesting thing about P6 from an encounter design perspective is something that Square has been showing a lot of attention to. Every time they make a new Ultimate, they future-proof it more than the last one. You know, you look at UCOB, you see the ludicrous amount of stuff you can skip in UCOB and Uwu. In T, they changed that a lot. You know, you can't kill before Gavel. It's not possible. The boss wipes you. And then in DSR, they changed it even more. You can't push bosses. Like, if you get P3 to 1 HP, he'll just keep doing mechanics until he's supposed to die. And now, in what is this fight called? Omega. Not only does everything give like from ruin, so you can't even emblem cheese it. P6 has the ultimate, like, will withstand the test of time, cannot be outdated mechanic where if anyone dies at any point, they will now die to every single instance of damage they take for the rest of the fight, and their limit break buff is completely removed. That's really, really brutal from final phase encounter design. Because even Dragon King Thornton could quite easily take a DPS death on content if you were playing with good players. This phase, you're forever doomed if anyone dies at like almost any point of the whole phase, which I think is a good thing. That's how it should be.
I definitely think it's some healthier way to future-proof. The cast locks in DSR is super cringe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's like they took the inspiration from UCOB and learned their very hard-learned lesson of UCOB just being doable with everybody dead doing 50% damage of what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I will say my one gripe with P6, and I talked about this with someone else who was in the World Race, is that if you are running double melee comp, you're putting 3 melee LBs into the boss. And the funny thing about LB is that if you didn't know about this game, every damage that you do to something is subject to a little bit of damage variance, and this applies to LB. The problem with LB is that it's a lot of damage, so that's a lot of variance. So you're going to get a lot of different mileage between pulls, where if you're low rolling every single melee LB versus if you're high rolling every single melee LB, that damage check is going to be vastly different. It's 5% up and 5% below.
No, like for melee LB, it's like 400k to 480k or some shit.
Yeah, it's like 470 something. 470. I want to say 478. 478 is the higher bound, and then it's like I don't remember exactly.
Normal is 443.
That's
be like 400.
So
that's like
just
80k
lose, like 70k damage.
Yeah, so
that's
if you low roll all 3 melee LBs, you are basically losing about half of the melee LB.
Yeah,
it's actually kind of substantial.
And that's not even
to add on to
accounting-
that.
Yeah, there's also the forced caster and ranged LBs, which also hit the boss, so that they're there too.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the one thing I really like just sending all the LBs. I think that's really cool. I just think that the damage variance part is going to displease some people.
Yeah.
Especially the people who are running double caster comps who need everybody.
Yeah, rip them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, stuff happens, man. You know, luck. You're lucky or not lucky. That's games.
That is true. You crit or you don't crit.
Yeah. That's how it goes.
Just crit 5 head.
Yeah.
Have any double casters killed yet?
No.
I want to bring up one more thing about the P6 as well. The damage output on the tanks is ridiculous. It's actually silly how much damage the tanks are taking this phase. Like Cosmo Dive does like I think it was like 300k, something like that, somewhere around there to each tank. Then the next mechanic, they're taking the wave cannon up in front, which is 400k. Then you do wave cannon again, so they're taking 400k again. And then there's another Cosmo Dive, which is another 300k. It's stupid. We with the comp we had had to bring the invulns in order to do it comfortably. It's like it shocked me how much damage we were taking in that phase.
Yeah, some of the damage that we were taking in that phase, even just as a party overall, we were considering if tank LBs were actually the intended solution until we hit magic number, and we were like, oh, we have to tank LB that, otherwise we just fall over. So it's such a large amount of damage that the entire party is taking.
Well, I'm starting to reconsider healing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Think about the tree.
I think
just as long as you go ahead, Cal.
The interesting thing about these busters is, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of any other tank busters in the game where the tanks are taking so much damage that they need party mitt to live the busters in addition to their personal CDs.
Yep.
That's how it's designed, though.
Yeah. Fortunately, the party's taking damage too, so it's like you're gonna put out the party mitt anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up DSR.
DSR, yeah. If you don't do 611. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I guess with Awkward's Edge.
Well, so I mean, this
is
design
also
is like a response to 611, and the overabundance of single target mitts they keep handing out to classes for fun, right? Like between like White Mage, Asher, Scholar, all the tanks, like you can just pile on single target mitt on someone and they can live through anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's if you have players that remember they have mitigation. Hopefully in Ultimate they do, right?
That'll be a bit of a prerequisite.
This is also, by the way, all that damage is after P5, where there's a buster in between each trio, and each of those busters is like a soul tether from DSR, like 350k each. Again, it's it took us by surprise because like we just didn't take very much damage for the first couple phases, and then these ones just blasted us in the face.
Yeah, like make no mistake, had Paladin not gotten the rework, I don't think it would be viable for this content.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
absolutely. Old Paladin would not be able to clear this fight comfortably at all, I think.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's dead anyways.
True.
So, I guess, so it sounds like, I mean, listening to you guys' thoughts throughout the fight overall, mostly you guys just really enjoyed doing this fight, and it sounded like a real fun time for you guys, although it was very grueling in some regard, but it sounds like overall you enjoyed doing it.
This is my favorite ult of the 5.
Okay.
Fun fight.
I will say the Exiflers in P6 are cringe.
Hi.
Okay,
You're a caster. Caster speaking.
Okay.
Fair. All right, so I mean, we're done with this now. We're done. The fight, you guys can rest, although it sounds like some of you aren't really resting. You're going out and you're still trying to get into some groups, or messing around, and you still go in some way or another. Now that you guys are done with this, I guess a good question is, you guys are definitely doing the next Savage that's coming up and being part of that world race, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hell yeah.
That's in the plans.
It's going to feel weird, though, right? Going from an Ultimate to Savage.
I mean, we've done that before.
Yeah.
Ultimate's a marathon and Savage is a sprint. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
You know what Savage means, guys, right?
Speeds?
That's right, Apple Jacks.
Oh my god.
I have no clue what that means.
Don't worry about it.
It's an inside joke.
Not a good one.
Okay.
But yeah, we've been through the transition from like Savage to Ultimate and Ultimate to Savage Prog. I mean, we know what it's like. We've had time to reflect on what it's like. But I really do think that especially this time around that Ultimate Prog really is something else. It's a whole different beast, and it is so much fun. And I really am going to miss Ultimate Prog for a while.
Yeah. You know, considering like the future of racing and everything else, I mean, we did have some stuff that went on, and I mean, this kind of stuff was going to happen eventually at some point. But I don't know. Do you guys want to put any thoughts into all the controversy over the week, or just leave it be?
The memes are funny. The memes are funny.
We're definitely the best part. But I think at the end of the day, it's better that this happens sooner than later. Because if this pushes the competitive rating community to being, I guess, more open and more streamlined, and maybe one day down the road we can even get official support from Square, like it benefits everybody for that to happen as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, though, I mean, the magnitude of the situation is definitely a bit out of control. I think most people would say.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I have to say 100%, you know, those were amazing players and everything else, and I'm really, you know, it is a level of being disturbed with how crazy it got, and I feel like it went 100% out of hand, because, yeah, no, that sucks. That kind of stuff, we don't want that kind of stuff happening in the game. Overall, the overall community is like, yeah, we'd rather have everybody on the same level, everybody not having to do kind of in the dark things or things that aren't really, that you can't be open about. To be a part of the race and be competitive with everything else. But they aren't like pressing a key that gives them an auto kill, right? It's not really on that same level. And I think a lot of people treated them like they were just these horrible, like devil worshipping evil people trying to summon like I don't know, something really horrible to like be just really, really bad, and they just I think it went kind of overboard, and I feel pretty miserable about how that went. And it was something that I think the World Race does need to change and get into not do kind of the in the dark thing. But it sucks because the raiding community overall is in this spot where all the competitive stuff has always been kind of offline in some way, and you just can't see any of that stuff, and there's no way to keep up with it. There's just no way. And so people are in so many different camps about it too. We know the official stance from Square Enix is 100% no anything at all. But I don't think you will ever be able to convince the raid community to believe that's exactly how it should be either, because so much of the raid community depends on something that tells you what your damage is and gives you a log of data, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like you're cheating or getting like, I mean, it's beneficial, but it's like a core part of the raiding community now. And if you get rid of that, then you get rid of a lot of the raiding community probably, I would think.
What has happened is Square has tried to take this stance where they have said everything is banned, and essentially the higher level rating community has said we don't respect that because it's just not conducive to a good gameplay experience with the amount of information the game offers. Maybe if there was a much more detailed death recap feature in the game or something, you really wouldn't even need to log. But just with the way the game works, it's accepted that players use ACT to upload the logs, and mainly for prog, you're looking at analyzing incoming damage. How much damage did something do to me with like whatever amount of mitigation, and trying to do that math without access to the FF logs data, it would just be a miserable experience at the end of the day. So that's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon, I don't think.
Yeah. I think it's impossible for it to. I mean, and there are other MMOs out there that officially support just official logs, right, and APIs and stuff that helps with the stuff and doesn't make it feel so sketchy and dirty and everything. And it makes the game so much better. And that would cut out, if there was like an official log like that and some level of like a way to handle, I know they already said never going to exist ever, DPS meters just won't exist in the game at all, but if there was some level of transferring that urge to wanting to see DPS to something related at all in the game, you'd probably cut out everything. And we could probably easily have all the raiders agree, yeah, nothing at all, we have what we need in the game. Always going to be outliers, always going to be people who want to mod and have big butts and things like that. But this is, when we're talking about core rating in the game, you call out, come on. We talk about...
Wait, what? Wait.
Pants on under clear.
Put some pants on.
But
I don't use those mods. I do not.
Good. But that being said, I think just knocking those two things out would just get rid of all of it. Right? Not 100% all of it, but would basically do most of the work that Square Enix is looking to have done. But go ahead, sorry.
I think in the current climate, I definitely agree with you. But looking back, like through the last couple tiers and like into Stormblood, even back that far, like the way that the raids in this fight are designed, people were getting an advantage from hiding their prog, being like, we solved this puzzle first, no one can steal our solution. And then your prog is now hidden, so who's to stop you from using things that you would want to keep hidden anyway? And that's kind of how we got to this point, basically, is that people then had this hidden arms race going on. But now, in this current climate, I definitely agree with you, where like people, in general, the community and a large part of the high-end rating, the high-end raiders are like, we would like to be open about this. We want to prog with streams on and prove that we're not using anything.
So
all that good stuff.
I will say that's kind of it. There is a part of the race where, I mean, we all love watching streams. We love watching streams. Like, obviously, I make an event that features people streaming the prog. It's such a huge thing to do. But I have so much respect for the players that don't want to do that, and they want to stay offline, and they want to hide their strats, because that's part of it. A lot of the high-end players love coming up with their own strats and not being tainted by other stuff that's out there. That is like the core reason behind most of it. But then, yeah, you're right. There's other things like it's completely invisible, and it just sucks. And there's no way to really moderate anything like that.
And now with how things are, like just with how the community exists at this current state in time, if you are hiding your prog, people are going to assume things about you. That's just a fact. Yeah.
And it sucks. It feels really bad because so many people are going to get like shotgun blasted, or like it's like a shotgun went off and just hit a whole bunch of people around, the person that was caught already, because now you can't stream offline without being called a cheater. I mean, that was happening during the entire event.
I like the point that you can't stream without being called that either.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's true too.
Us cheaters.
So they're using game capture, so you can't actually see what they're using.
Right.
Yes. How dare you want to stream at 60 FPS? But like, also like, people just didn't know that Izu and Callie streamed publicly on YouTube for Prog. So they just assumed, naturally, that they were cheaters, right? As you do.
Yes.
And that was a whole big thing too. I don't think that, obviously, like, there should be like a certain level of like proof standard that should be applicable to all groups. But I don't think like streaming is necessarily going to
it's not foolproof.
The problem.
Not even showing your task manager is foolproof.
Yeah.
As the YouTube comment person pointed out that I predicted, you could just change the name of whatever process you want. Those are malleable. Like it's not hard.
So there is like this whole subset of people that no matter what, they will say you're cheating. You could be in a LAN event where you have no access to anything. They'd be like, oh, well, did they have a USB? Did they disable the USBs? Did they put on their little thing on there when they were playing and put it in there? Like, there's so much that people will try to claim and just say things aren't legitimate. And there's just a whole set of group, and they're just going to say World Race is cheating. Everyone who's there is cheating. And it sucks and it feels miserable. But the only way to kind of move a little forward is to put as much of it in the light as possible. And that's all you can do. And deal with when these situations happen, just deal with it. And when these things are dealt with, they don't all have to be public, but we're going to do our best. Like on my end, you know what the worst thing about all this is that there's people out there that think I'm like a GM or something, or they think like I'm like some sort of like authority in some way. And they're like, why isn't Frosty doing stuff? I'm like, I manage a spreadsheet, man. I don't have
what are you
power
supposed to do?
I think that's why some support from Square on this would go a long way to assuage, I guess, people's fears with that sort of thing. And then, if you've got official support on this end, then the guy who comments on my YouTube video of my clear complaining about the fact that it's BGM only, saying that I might be using triggers, that's no longer a valid concern. That's just somebody being stupid that nobody really cares about that opinion.
Right.
But I think what we've been shown here, not just in the events of the Top World Race, but over the past several years, is that probably both sides need to compromise on this issue. Square needs to realize that their current stance on third-party tools isn't a viable or respected one, and the community probably needs to admit that it's having a lot of issues holding itself accountable and self-moderating what is okay to use and what isn't. And I kind of think both Square and the community need to meet somewhere in the middle on this and try to work together towards a better solution.
Yeah. And I think, like, there is going to be a lot of movement into the right direction after this, right? This has felt miserable. Like, a lot of the World Race stuff with that, like, has hit me pretty hard. And I think a lot of groups are like, man, I don't want to get caught with this stuff and get burned. Like, we just saw another legitimately good group get burned as hard as they did. And they're going to probably be way more careful and be like, is it even worth it? Like, being able to zoom out a little bit and get a little bit more information, being able to do a couple different things, is it even worth it? Because it's not going to 100% push you past a clear, most likely. And if you get caught, the community will burn you at a stake. And that is the scariest thing that's out there, but it is going to push a lot of these teams to just 100%, all right, yeah, not even going to consider it, not even going to think about it, and kind of move away from it. And if they're streaming, if there's some sort of stream of their progress, then all the wonderful people who want to just watch every single second and try to piece together, stuff, will find if they have like inconsistencies, they say the wrong thing or they figure something out a little bit too quickly that doesn't make sense. They're going to try to put that together too, right? And so it just adds one extra thing that will allow you to trip up if you are doing something malicious, but you never are going to have 100% foolproof. Oh yeah, I've convinced the community this team is not doing anything malicious behind the scenes. But we just try our best and execute when we move forward. And I don't know, man. It's been a rough week in that regards.
There will always be bad actors, but I really hope the community starts moving in a good direction after this.
Yeah, I think it will. And there's a lot to talk about what the next race is going to look like, because I do know a lot of the teams that don't stream, it's not because they want to hide like tools or anything else. It's because they want to hide their strats for one, and the other one is that they don't like being in front of thousands of people. They just don't.
I think both those reasons are super valid too.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I think that's fine to be competitive about your strats, and it's also fine not to want to be watched by thousands of people calling you a cheater, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think for the vast majority of us, the primary reason why we stream is for the publicity, for the clout. We love to kind of get up in front, and especially with the fact that we are often, in terms of the streamer groups, we're often the front runners now. It is incredible to kind of be the people who are able to kind of show that off first to the community. And the amount of support, especially with this World Race was such an incredible experience because of the sheer like quantity of support that we got, both like domestically and around the world. So I really couldn't ask for a better World Prog experience, and a lot of that was because we streamed.
Yeah, literally this is the World Race. It is so insane. Like some I think WoW, and I could be wrong, but it always seems EUNA. But this feels like we're hitting every single region, like Japan, Oceanic, China, EU, NA, all kinds of groups just everywhere out there. And a lot of them are pretty competitive groups that have a possibility. The wonderful thing about Final Fantasy World Races is that you just need 8 good players. You don't need like a team of 20 masterful players and 20 or 30 other people behind them supporting them. Although some groups still are like that in some way, but it's so much more accessible, and I think that it's really cool to see how there's so many groups just regionally everywhere taking a part of it. And I don't know, it's a sour note for me, but there are good things that could come from this in the future races. I do think the next race is going to be much more public. And I don't know what the solution is for the teams that just don't want to stream at all. I'd feel miserable if they're just excluded from the race just because they can't stream. They don't feel comfortable doing it, and they're never going to be taken seriously. There's always the talk of like having authority of someone like actually watching their stream and certifying it with the community. But that feels like a huge liability too. So I don't know.
Any proof standards would probably need to be driven from SC themselves, because they're the only ones that have access to like the mechanisms to actually, give us the best picture possible.
Yeah.
The community would never be able to come to a consensus as well on top of that. So
That's just the bottom line.
We need an authority to give it a hard line, basically, which
Yeah.
they technically have, but yeah.
It's a problem only Square can solve. We can't do anything about it. That's the reality.
Yeah, and I do know Yoshida does like the fact that the World Race exists, right? He likes that it's there. He said he was honored that Final Fantasy XIV has a community with the World Race going forward. But I don't know exactly what they could do. I'd love to help them any way that I can, but I don't know what that is. There is tools, they have the tools, the certified stuff. They have the tools to do this stuff. There is a lot of client-side stuff that they don't have control over, which they have to figure out, is that something that they can do. I know there's legalities to it in Japan for sure about putting client-side stuff on there, but we'll see.
They watch these shows sometimes, right?
They'll read the translation sometimes. Yeah.
Please make healer fun.
Oh my god.
But
Dude,
true though.
healing. By the way, Party Finder healing is literally the most fun I've had in this game ever.
It's pretty good, yeah.
I'm gonna tell you for sure. So, it's different when you're in a static group, but when you're in a Party Finder and you literally have to just adjust on the spot constantly to what's going on because nothing's consistent around you. Have different players every single time, and healers will randomly change up the way they're healing, and you have to figure out how to fill certain gaps. It's a lot of fun.
Back in Creator, I used to PF on a healer, and I would agree with you. But now that most of what I do is healing, you could not pay me to like heal outside of static stuff.
I don't know, man. Like I've been enjoying it going through this tier with healer, playing Sage. Sage is literally one of the most fun jobs I think in the game, to me, but not to you.
I mean, I think out of the healers, it's the most fun. So
fair.
Know, I'll give you that.
Fair. It does feel kind of painful. My attack key. I can't even remember the name of the attack for Sage. Am I blanking?
Gnosis.
Yeah, that's shift 1 for me. So I'm just sitting on shift and holding 1 the entire time.
You are an animal. Shift 1?
I just run around hitting shift 1 the entire time until I need to heal. I think I need to change it up.
Yeah.
My fingers hurt.
Removing the shift.
Yeah, just remove the shift.
You're good to go.
It's insane because I put all my heals at a priority of just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like I get all that on healing, but literally healing is doing Diosis a lot. It's just like it hurts after a while.
Your damage buttons are more important, actually, most of the time.
Yeah, did you forget what game you were playing? Just the DPS game?
Maybe not in PF. You're right.
In PF, yeah,
Party
I
Finder.
Guess, but by that definition, Swift Cast should be on 1.
To be honest with you, I'm very quick with my Swift cast because I have to run so much. And I do a hard cast shield on everybody constantly. So I treat every single PF that I go into is that I'm going to solo heal it. Because
that's what you have to do.
Yeah, fun
yeah,
fact,
so does
I
Carrot.
get that, I get that practice in P4.
Oh,
Need I bring up the graph, Mr. Chan?
But you know,
double misery.
That all being said, you know we're a little bit over 2 hours here, and so we're probably getting towards the side of wrapping up some things. Is there anything? There's a couple things I have questions in general for you guys, but one of them is just in general with this fight. Is there anything else that we didn't go over with that you guys felt like we missed that you want to make sure we hit on before we get off the show?
I think one thing that I personally enjoyed about thinking about in this encounter, and that a lot of other teams did, whether they liked it or not, was thinking about composition switches. Not everyone's going to like that, but I like thinking about that additional aspect outside of the poll of thinking, what is the best possible jobs that we could bring into this encounter to make it go as smoothly as possible? I think that is something that I'll always appreciate, and I think that's something that's cool.
So I'm going to let you know 100% I agree with you, and not everybody will. They think, hey, I like Paladin, I should be able to play Paladin everywhere, and I should never feel any discrimination of not being able to play Paladin somewhere. But when we get to the higher level stuff, Final Fantasy expanding its jobs overall and having so many different options, the game is going to be a lot more fun if we don't homogenize everything, and we just let some things be a little bit more overpowered in different situations, and just let that happen. Because Final Fantasy is about rotating jobs out too in general when we go back to the older games and everything else, and having 20, 30 different jobs, right? And then using the right ones in the right situations. And this is the MMO that will perfectly allow you to do it, because that one character can be these different jobs. It could suck to level them all up, but it's really not that hard, and I think it makes it a much more enjoyable experience to do that kind of puzzle fitting. But that's just my thoughts.
I think it sucks when you can't do content on a job, which is very rare, almost never. But some jobs being objectively better than others shouldn't be like a problem, because that's just going to happen sometimes.
And And I will add as well that, like, yeah, we had composition switches, and we're not the only team that did that. But even this content, the hardest bit of content, you can clear with any composition. I'm very confident of that fact. We just happened to do it because we wanted what was best for us in this race specifically. But if your group, if your mid-core casual group wants to come in here, you can do it with whatever you're comfortable on, and it will work.
Yeah, I mean, I think 100% all these fights should be. Again, I'm the memer who did creator on Paladin, but I think all content will be clearable by whatever job composition you want to put in. Well, with some limitations, you can't go in with 8 black mages, but
only.
Yet.
Yeah, with any logical composition, right? Any kind of reasonable composition, you should be able to do it, and not completely negate jobs. Like, every job will have a place somewhere in some group. I feel like that definitely should be for sure. But there will always be a top 8, top composition or top couple of compositions that would work best for a fight. And I think that's actually interesting. I know not everybody wants that because they want to be the holy paladin with shield and be able to conquer everything and feel strong in every single thing you do and never feel weak. But
I will tell you, Paladin is probably one of the best tanks for this. If in my personal opinion, I think Dark Paladin is actually the best composition for this fight. So there you go.
Fair.
Yeah, I will say the balance we had for this was actually, quite frankly, incredible. I mean, just going through the roles, all the tanks would have been really great. I think the only standout there is Dark Knight's just OP. 4 out of 5 of the melee, I think, are absolutely like neck and neck, super equal. That's really great. Black Mage and Summoner, both outstanding. Machinist and Dancer, both great picks. So there's a lot of not only viable but good choices for this fight.
Even Red Mage, which I would consider a weaker pick for this fight, like, it still has the ability to hold gauge into phases that your team is struggling with, and like that, and that's a very valuable thing in Ultimate.
Yeah,
so, like,
I personally
even the
did
jobs
not.
That are weaker, they have their pluses.
Yeah, I personally did not enjoy Red Mage for the first 2 phases, but there are strengths of Red Mage that cannot be overlooked that can make it valuable for a group for this fight. And I think the main thing actually that I think when we mentioned that this fight can be cleared with any comp, the thing that should be kept in mind is that because of how the checks are in this fight, you will probably have to do some amount of planning about how you want to plan your like burst windows, how you want to save resources and stuff like that between phases so that you are meeting these checks. So I think that's another additional layer to this fight that I think is, in my opinion, pretty cool.
And I guess if anyone's curious why we swap jobs, despite the fact that we think it's clearable on anything, it's not a matter of necessity. It's like one of like fault tolerance. So like, if you look through our pulls, there's multiple times where we go into P4 with like 2 DPS weaknesses, and we still like make the check, and that's like Black Mage, Gunbreaker, Diff.
White
like
Mage,
obviously.
It was the swaps to Gunbreaker and Black Mage specifically were, let's make the P4 blue screen DPS check specifically as consistent as possible, even if there are deaths. Yep. That is why we had the change.
And it paid off. We did blue screen. We had one pull where myself and I think Sura died during monitors. So about 20 seconds before blue screen, and we still made it through blue screen. So we did it with 2 DPS deaths.
I think we had a pull where Perry and Easy died too. We still
yeah.
And that was. And the reason we did that specifically for the race. We're trying to get through that phase as consistently as possible, get to our prog point as much as possible. If your mid-core group, even your hardcore group, you don't need to do that when you're not racing. Like, you can just play whatever is comfortable.
You should never look at world prog compositions for your own group's composition.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing. Every time I do a show like this, exact same sentiments. it's like, hey guys, we played what we played. You guys play what you want to play, and that's kind of how it goes. But and then there's always the one, except for this one job, right? But I think I think it's fine overall. The getting to this other question here, Karif already mentioned his thing. Make healers fun. The reason they're not fun is because you have to just hit one button for DPS, right?
It's a multitude of different things.
Okay.
I'd say like my biggest gripe about healer is that with the lack of mechanical nuance they have at this point in time, that the biggest difference you can make in your own DPS is to get a better group. And that's kind of like a big problem for me. It's like a lack of personal progression.
Well, okay, my main issue with healers is that there's only one. Like, there's besides Astro, DPS is really easy. But my second, like, main reason for hating healer is that like the heals like don't really interact with each other. Like, there's like no healing. There should be more of a healing rotation feel, like how DPS have a DPS rotation. Like the biggest interaction of heals is like Astro with you can upgrade horoscope with the GCD heal. That's like the biggest thing. Like, they should be more complicated like healing interactions. I think that would make it a lot better.
You know, once upon a time, Kamachi.
Well, I didn't play back then, so
back
Were
in
you born
my
back
day.
then?
I don't think I was born back then.
I think he was still in the second trimester during school.
Yeah. Healers used to have accuracy that they had to put on their gear.
Oh God! Don't bring that back.
Yeah, accuracy is not something I miss at all.
I miss accuracy, but D-hit sucks.
Please, Mr. Bard, can you cast Rain of Death so I can hit the boss?
While we're on the topic of did we miss anything big directly pertaining to the fight itself, there's one thing that I feel is socially responsible for me to talk about during this. I'm going to get on my soapbox for a little bit here, but top is an extremely difficult encounter, and it's in part because of the full randomness nature of a lot of the buffs and debuffs and who needs to do what. In the past, the community has turned to auto markers to solve a lot of this stuff, like with Titan jails and like with Roth in P6 of DSR. Guys, we need to find a better way to do that for PF strats in top. We cannot turn to auto markers to do every single Dynamis jump. It will backfire. I promise. Square's going to notice. We don't want people getting head markers unchangeable in combat, and that's kind of the road we're going to be looking at going down if all of the PF strats devolve into just use a third-party tool to auto marker everything.
You know, it's so hard, so funny, right? Everyone goes so hard against all of these tools and everything until they get in and they start doing the content.
Yeah, exactly.
Bro.
They're very hypocritical.
Yeah, we've got to figure out a better way to make strats that are doable by PF without like please bring AM or the content is unclearable.
Yeah.
Just gotta do the old-fashioned head marker macro method.
Oh yeah, what we did in DSR. It's manual head markers, basically, is what we're saying.
Yeah, that should be what we're looking at.
But you can also do the macro that does for the ones with the numbers. It does it automatically what the lowest available number is.
Yep. Yeah. If anyone doesn't know about this, you can make a macro that like puts the number 1 over your head. But if someone already has 1, it gives you 2 instead, or 3, and then 4. So you can do that to have everyone hit the same button that has the same code, but it assigns 1 through 4 for you automatically. Like not automatically.
That was the original Titan jail PF strat.
It is. Yeah. It's so good, and if we do that, PF, please, I would love it.
Like, make no mistake, the auto marker stuff that people use for Roth can literally be achieved with one click of a button on your hotbar without using third-party tools. Like, it is actually that easy to replicate that functionality without using stuff that would be considered cheating.
Yeah, yeah. Oy, such a messy situation, man. Anyways, because I mean, we were talking about it too, right? Everyone's like, where's the line supposed to be drawn? And I mean, it depends on what the perspective is. Do you like want to know your DPS or do you not want to know your DPS? Do you want to log or do you not want to log? And then everything past that, bad. Unless if you, never mind. I'm not gonna avoid that. But yeah, no, it's sad, like, because everyone's gonna have a different opinion on it, and I think we as a community just needs to say, all right, well, what's the thing? Where are we okay at? And I don't know. We're never gonna be able to convince everyone that like this is okay, especially when Square Enix is saying it's not. So it's just tough. All right, guys. So that being said, let's talk about the things. Maybe if they're listening to Square Enix is listening, what are the things that, like, if it was going to get translated and get read over by Yoshida or one of the developers in the morning, what are the things that you actually want them to hear from you?
Give us more 90-second skills.
Okay.
It's more interesting than the 2-minute meta.
Yeah, 2-minute meta is garbage.
Trios are better when the boss is targetable.
Okay.
Well, I mean, okay, to be fair, they did use the 2-minute like meta very effectively in this fight, but
it must have been very hard for them.
Well, for the most, like, aside from top, the 2-minute cooldown thing is bad. But like in top, I think it's actually pretty good. But
Okay.
Yoshi
I
P,
mean,
I know you're.
I'm just saying, you can keep the 2-minute meta. Just give me more like Salted Earth and Riddle of Wind, where it's
Okay,
actually
that's- yeah,
interesting
sure,
to make
sure.
it fit.
that's fair, yeah.
Yoshi P, I know you're changing Dragoon and Astro. Please do not do anything super drastic to Black Mage. I will cry.
What? You're just throwing Dragoon into the fucking wolves? Bro.
Don't worry, Perry. Don't worry. The people that design your job actually like it. You're safe.
You mean actually play it?
Yeah.
They do play. Yeah.
Fix the fucking ping animation lock bullshit, dude. Oh my
Okay,
god.
yes, please.
I don't want to have. I don't have to clip my
Address-
Stardiver, bro.
Just address ping issues in general, please.
Yeah, ping issues.
Yeah,
man.
if you want people to play your game with less to no of a reliance on third-party tools, you as a developer need to do something about the latency and ping issues your player base are experiencing. Like, that is the demand that is being presented by the community, and they are not willing to compromise. Because the community has had a taste of what playing this game is like without those problems, and they're not willing to go back now.
I will actually quit the game if I have to deal with ping issues again.
That's truth. I mean, that's again, we're going into the situation of like making the game more playable and enjoyable for its players. It is not breaking core mechanics of how these fights are made or anything else. It's literally just getting rid of some of the problems that are being caused by things that really shouldn't be there, I guess. All right. Anything else?
Fans' rights.
Okay, that's fair. Anything else?
Your GCD should execute on the next available frame. You shouldn't have to FPS lock.
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude.
Oh my god. That can of worms is so niche, bro.
Yeah, we have 30 hours to talk about this.
Yeah.
It's a tall ask. Please bring back Old Summoner. That shit was so much more fun to play than
Oh,
Summoner
come
is
on.
right now.
No
My
way you
brain
get
is-
Old Summoner before I get healers
Bro,
that are
I
fun,
like
dude.
I like having a fourth ranged fizz though.
You know,
Oh my god.
there's something that I want to bring up for your comment, Nori, too. Nari. Sorry, Nori. Is that this game does seem incredibly, like, progressive in those terms, right? With trans rights and everything else. I mean, you see it within the fights and, like, the stories and everything else, too, right?
Yeah, and the community is like hyper accepting. So yeah, it's a very good place for me and my kind to be. I'm happy.
I mean, it's amazing, and I love the stuff like that in the games, and it's when we get into like lore and story and everything else, Final Fantasy XIV knocks it out of the park with like everything, with just like political awareness, with like everything that they do with this game, and so man, I can't stop being impressed by that. I think there was some stuff. Never mind. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of conversations to go into with that. I was going to bring up how Yoshida was upset with how Horchafat was changed back in Heaven's Ward. I don't know how many of you guys remember that.
Who?
Wait, what?
I
Horchafat.
don't remember that.
Yeah, they changed, like in the English translation, there's a lot more of like a romance kind of going on with I think the Warrior of Light. And they like changed how that was going. And so I don't know, like when they brought it over to the English translation, because the Japanese translation wasn't like that. I could be wrong, chat could correct me, but it felt like they were trying to play safe or something with that. Like they toned it down a good bit. And I think he got really upset with that. Anyways, that being said, we are kind of in the closing bits here. My wife and daughter's like, all right, come on, wrap it up. So, well, is there anything else that you guys want to say before we go off the stream today?
I think that chat would be very, very upset with me if I didn't say red is defamation at least one time.
That's true.
Okay. Can you explain that for some of the people who might not really know?
Yeah, so what happened in P3 was we were talking about how to do P3, particularly Hello World. And obviously this is a mechanic that you kind of have to do over and over again in the same way over each different role multiple times. And while we were kind of conceiving how we were going to go about doing that, I kind of we had a discussion on like how we do callouts for it, and how, since we need to do this 4 times, it'd probably be prudent to go ahead and just count it out and then remind people of like one side or another. So I was like, okay, I'll just call, which tower we're on, and then call which color defamation is, and we just kind of formulated this sort of call out system that I then just sort of memorized and put together, honestly, partially for my own benefit, because it helped me keep track of exactly what every single step needs to happen within that, and partially for my group's benefits, so that we could all do the same thing. And I don't know why, but that seemed to have caught on and spread like wildfire. Like there were the awk emotes that were being used, like the awk dipped in chlorine versus awk dipped in tomato soup for red or blue as defamation. And then there was a remix video that used my callouts that was posted on Bilibili, and I mean they loved it, and it grew into this big old thing, and I had no idea what to do with it.
Nice. Yeah, this is interesting. I think this raid tier had more memes than any other raid tier ever for the World Race.
Very, very entertaining to be a part of.
Yeah.
Both like with seeing the memes come in and kind of being the memes themselves.
Being the memes, yeah.
Was really, I think it really just made it such a unique experience.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, especially God, man. I don't even know why I made those emotes. The pilk stuff got out of hand.
The
pilk kind of got out. It was such just an off comment of just like, that's kind of funny, and then literally it took over the entire event. But I mean,
I guess that was the P5 section where everyone's just sitting around waiting for new information. They needed something to do.
Was even before that, like
it started before that.
Yeah,
but
that was like day one too.
Yeah, but I mean, that is what was there to work with when everyone was seeing the exact same content over and over again. So when it expanded, it got expanded upon and kept moving forward. Again, by the way, guys, it's really not as bad as it sounds. I'm just.
Have you tried it?
I get the concepts. Like in concept, it makes sense because like a root beer float's fine, a Coke float's fine. Presumably, a Pepsi float's also fine.
It's just a poor man's Pepsi float, is what it is, man.
Yeah.
Now that you've opened Pandora's box, have you considered moving on to potentially a kickle?
No. Oh no.
Please, no.
Gareth, no.
Sounds like a pickle.
Pickle is one of the main ingredients, yes.
Is it a pickle and Coke?
No.
This man Kareth has been flooding our static chat with just the worst food combos I've ever seen for the last several months.
But it's like, okay, so it's like a textural thing, right? Not in a good way. So it's like a pickle, but like you cut it in half, you open it, you like embed Kit Kats into the pickle. And then you seal it, and then. All
right, guys. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up the show. I think we went way too far.
Understandable.
Yeah. No way. I've done my part. I don't need to adventure more into that territory. So, guys, is there anything that you guys want to say to everybody before we get out? Like any kind of last words, shout outs to anyone? I know a good handful of you guys are streaming. I'm going to try. Do me a favor. It would help me out tons if you guys get all your socials together and just send those to me in a DM, and I'll put them at the bottom of the video. For the people who would like their socials out there. But it would be, I have all your Twitches. Fortunately, I still have that command. Huh, there you go. They're in chat. But any other socials, YouTube, Twitters, things like that, just send it to me and I'll put it on the bottom of the video so everyone will know where to find you guys. But with that being said, is there anything that you want to do, like shout out wise, or last words to the community, or anything else before we wrap up?
Shout out Twitch chat. Shout out Billy chat. Our two loves.
Bro.
Base.
I feel like I need to go interview your guy from Billy.
Yeah, Ku-sensei, get him.
He's been in the chat. He's been posting.
in the chat.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a legend, man.
He's joling.
Hey, however, what's the name?
Ku-sensei?
I don't remember what he is on Twitch.
It's
There
Chinese.
he is. He just
There,
said
yeah.
ha, yeah, and he joined.
Ha, and then he's joeled, yeah.
Hold on. Let me go over here. I got to figure out how to do this. Click on the name, not ban. Where's the one that I want? Whisper. All right. Is it letting me? How do I? I don't know. Get in touch with me. Send me an email or something. Actually, now everyone's gonna send me an email if I tell them to do that. Message me on Twitter. Figure out some way to get in touch with me because I am very interested to learn about the community from China and everything because it's expanding a lot, and I feel like that's something that we haven't explored on this show at all. So let's get together and figure something out. But that being said, okay. Shout out to Billy, Twitch chat. Anyone else?
Shout outs to Eyes/Jenny for being our very, very kind translator for the whole Billy interaction. She helped parse a lot of Billy's comments and talked to Ku-sensei a lot and was really the bridge between us and the Billy community. So that was really cool. So
nice.
Shout out to literally everybody that is just perpetuating the red and blues defamation memes. I queued into a leveling roulette yesterday and somebody typed it in chat. It just really put a smile on my face, man, to see that people are keeping that in touch with the community.
Yeah.
Shoutouts to everyone who DM'd me random ideas because a lot of times there were stuff we'd already figured out or discarded, but sometimes they were helpful. So keep doing that in the future.
Gotta give another shout out to all the people who made all the plethora of Joel emotes in our chats. You made the World Race so fucking hilarious.
Old Dynamis.
We appreciate you.
and in despair.
Joel X's.
Shout out particularly to Mida Bell for half of them.
Yes, Mida Bell. Mida Pacespin Bell.
Mida Tornadoes Bell.
Bro, I want to see some PS with the exajoules in them, okay?
Yes, please.
All right. And that's it. Make sure I don't miss anyone.
Wait, shout out Wolfmaster XV on Perry's VOD comments that said these callouts for mitigation are gorgeous. I am free on Valentine's Day. I'm free. I'm looking for a date.
Let's go.
Nice. I do want to personally thank you guys as well for being such a blast to talk to you today, and of course during the World Race. You guys were definitely entertaining for everybody. We loved following your content, and again, it's 100% without you guys and the rest of the teams out there, there would be no World Race event that we could put on and didn't do what we did with charity. Again, this is literally, I'm blown away with how much we were able to raise, like $56,000 for children's hospitals and everything, and that's not just because of the people who put on the event. It's the people out there that are racing. It's the people in chat that are donating and watching and keeping up with everything. So you guys were a big part of that. I want to make sure you guys know that too. That even if just rating, you guys are helping charity. So thanks for that, guys.
We exist for the community's entertainment.
The people static.
The people static.
The people static.
International now too.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And and also of course thank you. We say a lot of stuff about the game. We might have every once in a while have like a little criticism about the game and everything, but I do have a huge appreciation for Square Enix and them putting out these fights and everything else, because these are like very unique, very amazing fights that we can't really get anywhere else. So shout out to all the developers who worked on this and gave us the ability to do these events, and it'll give us something to be excited for. But yeah,
it's so good.
Yeah, we only criticize them because we care a lot. We're very invested in the future of where this all goes.
Yoshi P, please lower crit variance, please.
Oh my god.
Oh gosh. All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up, guys. And I'll get this up on YouTube as soon as possible. I'll let you guys know as soon as we get out there too, so you can watch all the wonderful YouTube comments that would follow that. But thank you, chat, for being here today. Thank you, everybody. Involved in the World Race community. It's been a crazy 2 weeks. We got lots of more stuff coming up in the future. I don't know what the next week's show is going to be on, but we will definitely. It might be more World Race stuff. Holy crap, that is a lot of text.
I would like to retroactively apologize for getting chat to spam MogTalk at one point. That's my bad.
Did they?
It was my fault. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you guys timed out Bagel Goose because he joined in.
Yeah.
Did I?
Literally, while that was
So
happening,
funny.
I was making a disclaimer. I was like, guys, we did not condone this, okay? Our chats are a separate entity. They're a mind of their own. They do what they do.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. They can do what they need to. I have no clue what happened, by the way. So if we
the Reddit defamation copy
Let's keep it
pasta.
that way.
oh, okay.
Bagel Goose. What do you have to say for yourself?
No words.
Yeah, I got timed out for 10 minutes. I got put in jail for spamming copy pastas. I'm just an analyst, though. What else am I supposed to do all day?
What Cleese does, right? He just shit posts on Twitter and Twitch all day.
Yeah,
true.
Oh, I bet it was Darian here. Darian, that did it to you. So.
Wow, come on, Darian.
I don't know. Actually,
how can you do that to me?
All right, guys. Thank you everybody for watching. This has been great. Thank you again to you guys. It's been fantastic to talk to you guys. I'm excited for the future of the World Race scene and how everything works out going forward. But yeah, so normally we say bye and we all wave and we say bye at the same time. You still need to wave even though people can't see you. But we'll all just exit saying bye at the same time, roll the credits and everything else. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Bye everybody. See you next time. Bye.